Hi, I'm Aaron Smith-Levin, and this is Nick Lister.
Hi there.
And we're going to do our first interview for this channel of growing up in Scientology and talking to people who grew up in it to find out what it's like. So why don't we start by just briefly explaining how we know each other. So I knew you through your sister.
Right.
My wife and your sister were, well, basically best friends.
They were. I know they were best friends. I met you after you got kicked out of the church, but your wife and my sister hung out all the time, and your kids hung out with my niece.
So we didn't meet until after that, but probably for a good 6 to 12 months, my wife and your sister Ashley, they were together all the time. Our kids played with her. We have 3 daughters. My wife and I have 3 daughters. Ashley has 1 daughter. They would play together all the time. They'd be over our house. You know, they were very, very close.
Right.
In fact, I don't consider that my wife. Ashley's probably the only best friend I've actually known my wife to have.
Right.
And they were close. So that's how we knew of each other. And then how did we get to talking about this channel? Let's just briefly tell that story.
The channel came out of what I deem to be an underrepresented group or demographic in the story of telling the story of cults and Scientology and growing up in it and being born into it. It's a completely different dynamic when you're born into something. You have no choice. You don't stumble upon it. You don't find it. It's just given to you and force-fed to you. And it's different growing up in a cult rather than growing up in Christianity or Catholicism. And I know there's everyone out there where it's all cults. Well, just let me tell you, there's bad people and there's really evil people, you know? And Scientology is the Cadillac of cults. It's the ultimate of cults. It's they say, well, in Jehovah's Witness and Mormonism and Amish, they defellowship or they excommunicate you. Yeah, but they don't hire private investigators, bribe your friends to stalk you.
So after the Going Clear documentary,
Mm-hmm.
right, there was a couple things happened at the same time. After the Going Clear documentary, I'd seen a lot of feedback online, comments on the blogs and whatnot of the documentary was great. I understand why people get into Scientology in the first place. I understand why people leave Scientology. I don't understand why they stay for so long. And so part of me was like, I really want to answer that question, right? But from my viewpoint, my reasons are different because I didn't decide to get into Scientology. I grew up in Scientology.
Sure.
And then I said there was 2 things that kind of happened at the same time. There was the fact that people were posing that question and I wanted to answer it, okay? And there was the fact that Tony Ortega had written a little profile, like a third-person profile on me, a short thing on his blog at one point. And I told him I wanted to do a follow-up story because when he wrote the blog piece about me, it was before I was officially declared, right? It was before I got kicked out of the church. And there was a lot of things in that blog post that were left in limbo, like the families in the midst of being separated, and I think it might have mentioned that I'd lost my job and the kids were kicked out of school and stuff. And I told him that I wanted to do a follow-up interview to explain what all happened during that process, and also how it all turned out really, really well. Yeah. So there was these 2 things, these 2 questions, these 2 vacuums that I wanted to fill.
Right.
You and I were chatting, right?
Yeah.
And I told you, I said, oh yeah, I'm talking to Tony about doing this follow-up article. And then you said, I've been wanting to do the same thing with Tony as well, right? Because
I did it because I had so many friends that once my family story came out, the one I did with my mother in the St. Pete Times and then in Going Clear, it empowered a lot of people because the church also stopped sending PIs after everyone. They stopped stalking and harassing people like they used to. People felt like they could fight back or at least regain the ground that they had lost, and they wanted to tell their stories. And a lot of people are worried. They have friends in the church and they don't want to lose them, and I understand it. I just, like you said, you take that leap of faith, or whatever you want to call it. You leave the BS and the crazy. Life actually gets kind of cool, right? It actually gets quite rad. But I wanted to tell the stories and fill in the blank and give people a medium to where they could describe exactly what it was like to grow up in Scientology, to not have a choice, to be in the Cadillac of cults, to be in the cult of cults, the most streamlined cult this world has ever seen.
Right. And so your mom, Sarah Goldberg, she was one of the people featured in the Going Clear documentary.
Yeah.
The St. Petersburg Times article that ran, and I believe that you mentioned there was a Good Morning America piece as well.
Yeah.
If I recall correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the focus on that was kind of the story of how your mom was basically forced to disconnect from your sister, and again, we won't get into all the details, but essentially you were brought into the story, but really because your mom was kind of being forced to choose between you and your sister. And what you've never been able to tell is really what was all that like going through it from your experience, and then kind of a follow-on to that would just be growing up in Scientology in general. But you haven't really been able to tell your perspective of it on, it's really more been about your mom having to choose between two of her kids, but not necessarily what your story was. Is that accurate?
Yeah, more or less. I've had so many people are fascinated by Scientology, which is understandable. I'm fascinated by Scientology, and I was born, raised, left it, and want nothing to do with it. And most people don't know I was in it. Most of my friends these days had nothing to do with Scientology, but a lot of these people wanted help and they wanted answers. And I got on with my life, and I got a lot of people out of Scientology, and I moved on, and I became happy, way happier. And so a lot of people have the same questions about the experience in Scientology and what it was and what I went through and how I did it. And I've got millions of anecdotes and ditties about my experience in it, And I guess this is my way of filling in the blanks, and letting other people take off from there.
Great, awesome. So there's many different avenues we could go down for this interview, and we don't have time to cover absolutely everything. But
sure.
Why don't we start out with just some of the questions I've put together about what I hope is going to be the general overarching subject of the YouTube channel, which is kind of what it is like. What is the experience of being a young person growing up in Scientology, right?
Yeah.
So how old were your parents when you were born? Were your parents already in Scientology?
They'd been in for over a decade. My mom and dad had founded, I believe they're around the same age, founded around 26, was when they went to LA, and that's where they met. And I was born when my mom was 37, so 10 years later.
Got it. Okay. So what's the earliest memory that you have of being exposed to Scientology, or realizing that you were being exposed to Scientology?
Well, like, I had obviously been around. It's just like if you go into a church, right? Like, you can see the cross and the effigy of the statue of Jesus Christ and the stained glass windows. I mean, in the church, we just have really nice buildings,
So what's the earliest memory that you have of going into an org?
Right. Well, the earliest memory I have of, so this is what my parents are doing, is I was at Celebrity Center in LA, right? And up until this point, I had just been downstairs in the canteen area, just drinking sodas and eating, candy bars and hanging out in the garden, just, with other kids whose parents were up getting auditing and going in session. So I must have been 5 or 6. Sounds so miserable saying I was that old, and I was already like starting to be indoctrinated and just.
Okay, so
I did the communication course, the children's communication course.
There you go.
And I was up in their course room on the 15th floor or something, looking down like, I want to be playing. Why the hell am I in here?
So this is in the current Celebrity Center, the big, like, there's been a couple locations. So
yeah,
the current one, the big one,
the manor, the spires, and it looks like some cheap prince is gonna walk out.
So you're 5 or 6 years old. You're on the children's communication course, and what are you doing? What are you doing on the course?
I mean, I might have been 7. I mean, I had been able to read a little bit, but I couldn't read I know I couldn't read that well, so I might have been like 5 or 6 actually, because I remember like them kind of telling me what it was. The children's communication course was just a lot of pictures, and so it was TRs. It was confront, sit there and look at someone, and then and then bull bait. They try to make you laugh or upset you, and then you got to keep a straight face and all that. And so I sucked so bad at those. I remember hating it. I hated it from day one, man. But not to mention they tried to get my mother to abort me before I was born because she worked at Able, and they wanted her to work more for her.
But that's not your earliest memory, right?
So I'm glad it wasn't my earliest memory. I never would have taken the communications course.
So, okay, good. So the TRs, a lot of places have defined TRs. So a TR stands for training routine, which just basically means a communication drill. That's what people who are training to be Scientology auditors, they do these drills called TRs. So basically the children's communication course, you're sitting there, you're doing the same thing, sitting across from each other, looking at each other without, flinching or whatever. So basically, communications drills.
Right.
So was that something that you enjoyed? Miserable, like the drills themselves miserable, or like having to be on course, or the friends? Was there a social aspect of it?
I was a 5 or 6 year old who loved California. I loved the mountains. I loved trees. I loved climbing them. I loved digging holes and making stuff, and I loved burying my sister's Barbies and toy ponies, and then having my Godzillas dig them up and do stuff. So you can imagine how much I didn't like just sitting there looking at some idiot that was staring at me and trying to go coochie coo and make me laugh. I was like, what the hell am I doing?
Okay, so do you remember why did you have to be there?
I don't know. My mom, I honestly can't remember the dialogue. I'd be making it up. But somehow it was adjudicated that I was going to do a communications course. I was going there all the time because my mom was on OT7. So she was going in session 5 or 6 times a day. And all I knew was be quiet and only wait.
So it's either your mom needed daycare, or the org needed a new
first service start. Probably they needed a first service start, and so
she needed to help them get their stats up.
Yeah, I just stuck out because I was a
Or she just thought you were just being a troublemaker in life and needed some control. I mean,
I was a good kid. I was like a shy kid. I don't know. I mean, sure, I don't know. Whatever was decided, it was
okay. Good.
But I wasn't the only one. There was all these other little kids in there, and I was like,
right.
I was looking at them, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll do what they do.
Right. What do you remember? I mean, I know it was a long time ago and all, but was it a course room specifically for kids, or did it just happen to be a lot of kids in the course room?
It was a long time ago. I remember there was other kids in there, but it was their Div 6 course room. It wasn't specifically for kids. I mean,
right.
But they.
Okay, good.
I couldn't even read it. I do remember. I was like, "What's that say?" They're like, "Okay, so you're gonna sit here, put your hands in your lap, relax," and I was like, "Oh, this is so shitty."
Okay, so that's one of the earliest memories you have of sort of being brought into the subject.
Yeah.
What about the first time you can recall that it transitioned from being something you were kind of being compelled to participate in to maybe you having your own reasons, kind of crossing that line of have your own reasons or your own desires, or found something that you liked about it?
Well, I'd say when I was like 13, right? But I found things I liked about it. But the whole experience was quite crazy even while I found things I liked about it. The technology, everyone wants to ascribe it to Xenu, and that's like a drop in the bucket, really. There's so much crazy stuff that doesn't really cross your mind as weird, even when you hear it from the people who are never in. But the stuff I liked about it was stuff that you like about any subject in psychology or any subject in religion, which is a moral code. Right? They have the way to happiness. Other people have the 10 Commandments. It's simplistic, anodyne ways of living that keep you healthy and at peace with fellow humans,
So let me ask you this. You mentioned the age 13, and I'll ask you specifically about that in a moment. But so how would you characterize your involvement in Scientology from 5 or 6 years old to 13 years old? Like, what kind of stuff did you do? Did you do more courses? Were you involved in some sort of, social activities or like...
No, not really. I just went to the church all the time. I mean, in that time between 5 and 6, and by the time I was 13, we moved to Florida, Clearwater, when I was 9. And then my mom was always on OT7. My dad was volunteering for CATS, which was their anti-IRS front group. And Clearwater was the shittiest town I'd ever seen in my life coming from LA. No mountains, humidity, no waves. The water felt like urine. Like, this place was terrible, but here was this huge, beautiful hotel with good, chocolate shakes and food. Okay, so that's what I did in between that time, was I just hung out at the Mecca.
Okay, so you guys moved to Clearwater when you were about 9. Your mom's auditing on OT7 that whole time, so she's going in session 4 to 6 times a day. She's doing her 6-month checks, right?
They tried to recruit us when I was 10. My mom had divorced my dad, and then there was recruiters coming around and trying to convince my mom to join the Sea Org, and then they could get me to join the Cadet Org. And I remember we did a tour of the Quality Inn, which is what's the shittiest hotel in America? That's what it was.
And that's where the Cadet Org was.
That's where the Cadet Org. That's where the children slept and stayed and played.
So they
were walking me around this place with just busted up cement and rotting walls with crappy pictures all over them, and all these other kids that looked like dirty and malnourished and walking around in their all the same outfit that was all torn and tattered, and they're like, "I love it here," and I was like, "Wow!" It reminded me of The Little Princess or Annie. I was just like, looking at everyone. And my sister was in the Sea Org at this point. She had joined the Sea Org when she was like 14 or 15 in LA. So I was like, no dad, no sister. I was chilling here, and they're like, you want to be here? I was like, my life sucks, but this looks worse.
So basically, it was just you and your mom.
Yeah.
I got it. And I remember I remember the quality in because I knew some kids when I was younger. I was in Clearwater. I knew some kids that were in the cadet org. They called it the QI. They stayed at.
Yeah, QI.
It's not even in Clearwater, is it? It's kind of like the QI is actually in Clearwater.
It's like Largo or something.
Okay, and it's where the cadets they lived there. They didn't live with their parents who lived at the hacienda. Their parents lived with them at the QI. Is that correct? Do you remember?
I think that's it.
Okay.
I mean, they told me some crap about I get to see my mom every day for an hour, and I was like, well, that really doesn't beat my 6 hours a day I get with her.
I get it. So, long story short, though, you did not join the Sea Org. You did not join the
cadet
org.
No. My mom looked at me and she said, "Would you want to?" And I said, "Nope."
Right. And so, were you going to school when you were here in Clearwater? You said, let's say you're 9 years old. From 9 to 13, were you going to school? Mm-hmm. Public school, private school?
Private school. They were all Scientology schools. They were all sponsored by Applied Scholastics. So they used the study tech, and then those schools would pay 10% to Applied Scholastics International, which would then give us the money to the church.
Okay, good. So let's spend just a few minutes talking about going to one of these private Scientology schools that is supposed to have nothing to do really with Scientology.
Zero.
And I mean, they don't literally teach Scientology, so I'll give them that.
Yeah.
Right? And that's fine. It's not. There's nothing wrong with necessarily having. Well, I'll let you answer the question. What going to the Scientology private school? You and I know it's a Scientology private school, even though they're not marketed that way. What do you learn at the school that could be ascribed to Scientology, and what do you learn in the school that's just totally normal?
I mean, you learn the 3 R's. You learn science and physics. You can't, that's all straightforward. They're really straightforward schools, but then there's this undertone where everyone doesn't talk about it, but it's true. Everyone there has parents in Scientology. 99% of all these schools are just all Scientology.
What about the people who work at the school?
They're all Scientologists.
Okay.
I mean, maybe occasionally there's a non-Scientologist, and they always feel weird, and they're always looked at until they start doing courses. They teach study tech, which is fine enough, and it tells you to look up your words you don't understand, demonstrate things out that you don't get, and if something's too tough, you go back to what was easy until you get it well enough till you can move on. I mean, it's not too crazy, but you'll always see like a history of man lying around, or the Dianetics picture book at Delphi or Clearwater Academy, or Light School, Renaissance Academy, all these different places. Right. So you'll see Scientology literature just strewn about, and then when you go into the admin office with the actual staff of the school, there's OT plaques in the ethics officer, the principal's office. There's superpower donation, contributor statuses, symbols.
What about in a normal public school? Let's say you get in trouble, you get sent to the principal's office, you do detention. Were there any component of Scientology ethics and justice that were used in the schools? Do you remember?
Oh yeah, I mean, it was all Scientology justice, right? It was conditioned, so it started as low as, I believe it's enemy or confusion, whatever. It's at the bottom of the confusion. It goes.
So they use Scientology ethics conditions on the students.
Oh yeah, 100%. So they use the term overt and withhold. So an overt is a transgression, and withhold is a transgression you have not told, and then they go into the whole mechanism of you commit an overt, you get a motivator, which is a transgression against yourself. It's more or less scientific karma.
Okay. Now that there's no question that is getting into the Scientology philosophy, right?
100%.
I mean, it'd be like in Catholic school if you got in trouble and you had to do confession and say Hail Marys. I mean, that's Catholicism.
Yeah.
So,
and also what happens in these schools, the church will know about. I mean, if you're doing something bad enough, the church knows everything those kids are doing.
If someone writes a report on you, it's not just
if you get a KR, a knowledge report, right, which is just a missive that someone writes against you on something that was, quote, out ethics, then if it was egregious or bad enough, then the Church of Scientology will have it and put it into a folder with your name on it. And I've had a folder since I was 4 or 5, so I've got a lot of folders.
Right. Okay, great. And so I think there was something else I wanted to ask you about the schools. So did they actually require students to write up their OWs?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, so what it was if you had continuously gotten in trouble, if you kept coming in late, if you couldn't get along with the teacher or the student, whatever you could do that's unbecoming of a student, you did it enough, and you write up your OWs. I think I did my first OW write-up when I was 9.
Right. Okay.
All right. And then I had to write time, place, form, and event.
Right.
What I did, I poked Johnny in the eye.
This is one of the things that I say as a result of Going Clear, but it's not, Going Clear is not the only place where this has been pointed out. That, the difference between going into a Catholic church and doing confession with a priest, and sitting down with a Scientology auditor and doing a confessional, is that the priest isn't writing down the exact details, time, place, form, and event of everything you're telling him you've ever done bad, and keeping it in a file in archives forever
with notes.
So, and again, it's one thing if it's being done in a church. Maybe you can say, even in a Scientology church, you could say it's ecclesiastical and whatnot. But here we're talking about in a school where students who aren't even Scientologists, most of these students, just because their parents are Scientologists doesn't mean they're Scientologists, are writing down basically everything that they've done bad.
Yeah, and the parents are all on board with this. I mean, there's no parent that disagrees. If the parent disagrees, the parent gets pushed in the direction of getting kicked out of Scientology. No one wants to go that route. No one disagrees with the church. So when the church, what'll happen in a typical Scientology family is when a kid's doing something wrong at home or in school, it's, I'm going to write a chit or I'm going to write a KR on you, and it's going to go into your folder, right? And you're like, you learn to fear this folder as a kid. You're like, oh hell, like that thing is growing, right?
You can say fuck on this channel.
Fuck that. But I remember this course supervisor at Flag when I was like 12 wrote a KR on me for, I made fun of L. Ron Hubbard. I said something mean about L. Ron Hubbard, and he laid into me and like pointed at his picture. Daniel Sanchez with his name, and I think I farted. Right, and he wrote. I actually have it. I'm gonna give it to Chris. I'm gonna make sure we can get it here. I have the KR, or like I ripped ass or something. It was something so menial, and I went to ethics, and I had to write up OWs.
Right.
And I had to go on the meter, and it was like, what evil intention do you have against us? I was like, I said LRH looked bloated or something. I was like, and he does. And he goes, what's your overt against LRH? I was like, he's been dead since I was born. I don't know what I did to him,
Right.
It's really, this folder grows and grows no matter what you do, and people leverage the folder against you. I'm going to write a KR on you, and then you go, oh shit.
Yeah. So let me throw this in there. There's 3 different kinds of folders on anyone who's ever been involved in an org, right? There's the PC folder, which is where all the reports from auditing sessions go. There's the ethics folder, which is where all the reports that have been written on you go. And then there's the personnel file, which only applies to staff or Sea Org members. Now, and I'll verify this, but even the ethics folder is supposed to be protected by priest penitent privilege. It's not supposed to. In Scientology, the stuff in your ethics, your PC folder, you're not supposed to get in trouble for.
Right.
The stuff in your ethics folder, you can get in trouble for. But for legal purposes, they're both supposed to be protected under the priest penitent confidentiality clause.
Yeah.
So let's see. There was a question. Okay, so we got off onto that train of thought because we were talking about whether kids are actually expected to write down OWs in school, and we covered that. Right. So they are.
But then they use that folder against you. Like when I was
in the school or in the church?
At the church.
Okay.
At the school, they're actually rather humane about it. I'm going to be honest. I'm not just going to throw all those schools under the bus. Although the problem with those schools, the biggest problem I had was like when I was 13 going to Back to Basics, which was run by Mallory and Joan Pascoe.
Is that the name of the school, Back to Basics?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or it turned into Keystone High. CMO would come to the school, Commodore Messenger Office, so recruiters, and I would be in class. And so I would lose out on hours of school on any day they wanted to come and try to get me to join the Sea Org. And I was 13. So here I am, my mom's paying $800 a month to go to this private school, and the principal is so excited to take me away from schooling, to go outside and sit there for 3 or 4 hours while recruiters told me about how many people are dying on psychiatric drugs, about how wars and dictators and psychiatrists run the planet. They showed me a scripture of a transcription of an auditing session between L. Ron Hubbard and another guy, where the guy was running out an experience with Martians, and he said, the Martians are worried that Scientology is getting too close to helping man, and they want to, and they're showing me this at like 13 to scare me into joining the Sea Org. Into joining the Sea Org. And that's what I was doing in school at 13.
Right.
That's my problem. My other problem was that at 13 at Flag, they had this Sea Org slideshow. It was like 27 minutes or something. I think I remember like the exact how long it was, because my friend Carol Karnofsky, who used to be a schoolmate of mine, ended up for 5 years being the Sea Org slideshow recruitment officer, which meant she just stood outside this door 16 hours a day and got people to see a slideshow.
Right. So her statistic would have been number of people who see this movie.
So I always felt bad for her. So I must have seen that thing like 500 times. I'm not even kidding. But It was Jason Begay, the star of Chicago PD, right? He was narrating the whole thing. He narrated maybe like 20 minutes of it. I think he even mentioned he did it in
Right.
But like, it starts out with pictures of tanks and like emaciated and dismembered children and starving kids in Africa and just a nuclear bomb explosion. And it goes like, and Jason Begay's voice comes in with these dark ass lights in this room, and he goes, "We live in a world gone mad, where pain and strife for the lot of humankind." And then you're just like, as a kid, you're like 12 years old, you're like, it's like Ludovico. And then you come out there like shaking, and then the Sea Org member, but the end is all like lights and happy music and like the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, like dun, 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 and it's like the Sea Org, right? Like, and then LRH is like a voiceover of LRH with the backup violins, and he's like, "We are the only hope in all the broad universe." He goes, "I have borne this burden too long. I share it with you now.
Right.
Won't you join me?" And then you walk out and there's Sea Org members to recruit you for 8 fucking hours.
Well, I'll tell you,
and that happens every day, man.
Well, that is one of the subjects that I wanted to. I don't know if we're going to do it in this interview, but I really did want to get into exploring what is the recruitment pitch that kids are given. How is the Sea Org framed? What is the context that it's put into as far as why you're joining, what you're trying to accomplish, why it's important.
Yeah.
You know, how your education is not important, how your dreams or what you want to become are not important. Nothing could possibly be as important as.
Oh, I mean, I remember,
what you could be accomplishing in the
across
Sea
the
Org.
boards. It's. I think it's more cruel than I could ever explain. I talked to that girl Kara when she got out of the Sea Org. She goes, "I'll put it this way, Nick." She goes, "I'm in my mid-20s and I don't know how to balance my checkbook."
Right.
You know, she goes, "I don't know how to open a bank account." She's like, "I don't know how to drive a car." Right? And obviously Scientologists have very big vocabularies and they know a lot about certain scientific ideas and things about the mind and stuff. But when it comes to everything else, complete idiots, right? They pitch it insanely. And it's straight out of L. Ron Hubbard's textbook of find their ruin, hammer it in, deliver the solution,
right,
whatever, and then they call it the Deadly Quartet. But,
well, maybe we'll explore it here because why not? No reason not to.
Yeah,
do
I mean,
it
well,
now,
the way
So
I got recruited like mad, right? I was in Boy Scouts. I eventually got my Eagle Scout, but in that time, I was trying to get my Eagle Scout. So I'm like between the ages of 13 and 17, I would get in trouble all the time. I mean, this was another thing going back to the folders. I would get pulled in, right? And Charles Mitchell, this guy who was a Sea Org recruitment officer, the head one, now he's out of the Sea Org. Go fuck himself. He would recruit children. He was always about recruiting children, 13 and 14-year-olds, right?
and mostly from the schools, or it didn't matter? It didn't have
From
to
the
be
schools, anywhere, but if they were at Flag, because I was just doing like my Hubbard Dynamics Auditor course, the Volunteer Minister course, I was just doing these basic courses because, in my opinion, they help people and I should learn it because that was what all my friends did. That was like, and I had pretty badass friends, you know what I'm saying? I was like best friends with Tom Cruise's niece, Jamie Lustavoy, for a while, and like I was friends with David Miscavige's nieces, and I've been around the block, and I thought it helped, so I was taking the courses, but at the cost of being heavily recruited. After events, recruiters would grab you by the hand, and I kid you not, like forcefully move you and shove you into chairs or shove you into dark rooms with Sea Org recruiters after these big events. And then they would have all this material on statistics of how many people take psychiatric drugs, how many people commit suicide each day, how many people, kill other people, how many people are sold in like the sex trade every year. And it would say the Sea Org is the only group to handle. So they would show you all these crazy things, right? And they'd show you pictures of just fucked up shit. And then they would show you the LRH policies on why the Sea Org is the only thing which can cure it. So you sit there in this state of catatonia,
right.
And then they literally, in a short recruit cycle, is like 3 hours. 3 hours with 6 people around you is like light.
And at an age of, we're talking 13 or younger.
13 is when it started. And then when I would go on course, Daniel Sanchez would even let recruiters in the course room. And it was even against LRH's policy to be recruited during course. I was like, well, and then, but I spoke up and I got sent to ethics.
Right.
And then they reamed me.
So, okay, here's a question. From the recruitment pitch that they're making, right? Mm-hmm. They present this horrible situation of planet Earth and what everyone's, destiny is going to be is doom and destruction. How are they explaining why joining the Sea Org is the only way to prevent that from happening?
Well, because it's inculcated into you at a very young age that Scientology is the only answer. There are no other answers. I mean, LRH laughs about Jesus and Christianity. He laughs about confessionals in the Catholic Church. He laughs about, he throws Freud and Kant and Hegel and every psychiatrist or psychologist that ever came out of Leipzig, Germany, just under the bus. It's just they were all... Now, he gives kudos to them, at least he did in the beginning of Science to Survival, 50,000 years of thinking men. But it was almost like, hey, guys, thanks for trying to figure out all this. I finally did, but here's a little thumbs up for trying. And it was just... So it made Scientologists think like, what idiots. I mean, we really have the true data. So Scientologists, this is what makes Scientologists so narcissistic.
And so why joining the Sea Org? Why not just go out and be a field auditor?
Well, that I was just painting a picture. Like, so you think Scientology is the only answer. Why not just be a field auditor? Why not be someone that just goes and disseminates or promulgates Scientology out there to the public, but you're not clergy? Because LRH writes this thing in Keeping Scientology #1, which is like... he describes where we're at as a brief breath in eternity, right? Like we have a very slim chance of surviving. It may be too late to save the universe. And he writes things in their lines such as like, you're either with us or against us. We'd rather have you dead than incapable. Turn that wandering eye into a dedicated glare. He calls anyone who's not into Scientology a namby-pamby panty-waist dilettante. Like, he creates this extremist idea that like we could be dead. And then in all his lectures he'll say the only reason the Earth is still spinning basically is because Scientology has done what it's done. But it would have ended due to nuclear war had we not existed. Right. And maybe we have shown up late. So you're constantly in this state of thinking that the world's going to fucking end.
Right.
So that's why. Right, and then they go, we need you 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, 364 and a half days a year.
Right.
You can have half a day off.
And you're not being recruited by like some 50 or 60-year-old dude. You're being recruited by some good-looking girls or some guys your own age who you think are awesome.
And your
people,
friends.
Right?
You're being recruited by your friends.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, all my friends were decently active and constructive people. Well,
when you say being recruited by your friends, your friends had to already be recruited.
Yeah.
So
what they would do, and this was just common knowledge because I eventually ended up joining staff for a few years, more like slave labor. But when they're in their behind the closed meetings, they want opinion leaders. They want people who can influence other people. So what they do is they recruit the biggest and baddest or most influential, and then they take that person everywhere, and they take him to all of his friends, and they go, look. So that's how they got me. They took my best friend at the time, Spencer Bradham, and they got him recruited, and then he came over to my house, and I was so heartbroken. This was a kid I played soccer with my whole life. Grew up playing classical piano with him, and we were just like, that was my dude. And they had also had before that, I mean, at some point, every one of my friends was in the Sea Org, right? And they got me to join. I mean, I left after like 3 weeks because...
Right. And even though, my experience with Sea Org recruitment was a little different because I was already on regular staff.
Yeah.
I was able to see this kind of things that you're talking about, right? Because I was a regular staff member training at Flag in Clearwater, so the same place where you were.
Right.
And my friends were Sea Org members, and they couldn't recruit me, but I could see what they were doing. And so it was just like what you're talking about. Let's say recruit one of the more popular guys in school, or girls, and then that person, their job is now to go recruit their friends.
Right.
How cool it is, how awesome it is.
Right.
You're essentially an emancipated minor for all intents and purposes.
Right. And you would be. And there was 15-year-olds getting married in the Sea Org, right?
Yeah.
To 40-year-olds. Because they were emancipated and it was legal once they were married. It was fucking disgusting.
Right.
And I know a dozen guys I grew up with who all fucked minors.
So there is... So there is a certain cachet.
I don't hang out with I don't like any of those guys. I knew them, and they've all fucked minors. That's my other problem with Scientology.
So at that young age, there is a certain cachet to being able to, if you join the Sea Org, you gain a lot of freedoms in a way, because kids in this society don't have really any freedoms.
Oh yeah, when you're 15, they all get the mouth of a sailor. A lot of them pick up smoking.
Right. They're essentially adults.
They're essentially
Scientology doesn't
adults.
view children as children.
But once they join, they're adults.
So let's touch on this. How does a recruiter go about, like if you're a young person and you're being recruited,
right?
Usually your objections are along the lines of either I want to do my sports, I want to do my acting, I want to hang out with my friends, I want to be an astronaut, whatever it is. How does the recruiter convince you that those things are not worth pursuing or are not important?
Well, they convince you. I mean, they don't convince you. They use LRH policy to convince you. This isn't your only life. This is a meat body, right? And this is all. And then Earth is a prison planet, okay? And there's just things in it make to look nice. So art, friends, family. Family's nothing. Family is nothing more. And Charles Mitchell actually told me. He looked at me and he said, "Nick, your mother is nothing more than a zygote that created from an egg that you were bred from. That is your only." He told me that when I was 13. Right. You know, I went back to my mom and I said, "So he said basically all you were was an egg. Like we got nothing." Like you just hear the craziest stuff, right? And LRH says that you've had more lifetimes than all the sand on the beach, and so you think that it's all worthless anyway. Life is worthless. That's what a Sea Org member paints a picture as. So they would tell me. I mean, I remember Alan Javonin, who is like an OT, fucking 94.
Alan Juvenon.
Yeah,
I remember that person.
Yeah, just a weirdo, honestly. Like the guy was the biggest sober stoner I've ever met in my life. But they would tell me, like, and Charles Mitchell would, "You don't need to get your Eagle Scout, Nick. LRH got his Eagle Scout, and he paved the way." He did
it so you wouldn't have to.
I kid you not. And I was looking and I'm like, I don't even know what to fucking say to that. Like, you don't need to have sex, Nick. Other people have. And they loved it. So it's okay if you don't go have sex. And I'm like, yeah. But so they would tell you shit like that. Like everything was worthless to them. When I had this girlfriend when I was 16, she was like this brand new Scientologist chick. I didn't get her into Scientology, but her sister did. And we were 17 at the time, I guess, and we'd been dating for a while. And so she was getting recruited by this fucking piece of shit named Trevor Sales, right, in senior HCO. Guy just looked like a creeper. His teeth just like.
I know Trevor.
Yeah, dude, but he walked around like he ran the joint, man. And so he was in senior HCO. So, like, this guy, he brought me in for an interview because I wouldn't join the Sea Org.
He was basically the same age as you, or a little older?
Yeah, like a few years, right? Like, I was like...
Not an adult.
I was like 17, he was like 20.
Right.
You know? He brought me in for an interview once, and it was like a black PR interview, he called it. He wanted to find out black PR in the field. He asked me, have I ever contemplated suicide? I said, yeah, I broke up with this chick. It was actually Dave... never mind. It was this girl. And... I had this bad little like romance with her, and or just got my heart broken. I was a young guy, you know. Your first girl that like breaks your heart, you just think the world's gonna end, you know. I'm never gonna lose my virginity. Might as well die. Other H already had sex. I don't need to. And I was laying on my kitchen floor, and I said, you know what if I just took a knife and ended it? I jumped off a bridge. And that's what I thought. I said, you know what? Whatever. I got school in the morning, so I got up and I went to bed. You know, but that was the extent of it. So Trevor asked me, have I ever thought about committing suicide? I was like, I don't think so. He goes, think hard. And then I came up with that, right? Like, okay, well, yeah, this girl broke my heart, and then I laid on the kitchen floor, and I was just miserable. So he sends a report to everyone on the Flag Land base, all 1,500 fucking idiots, and says Nick is no longer qualified for the Sea Org because he's contemplated suicide. I went back to him and I said, dude, I'm a 17-year-old kid. What are you doing to me? You went and found my deepest secret and you told everyone. He goes, well, Nick, we can't have people trying to recruit you when you're not qualified. I go, if you haven't noticed, I don't want people to recruit me, but you just had to like ruin my name to do that. And then my girlfriend gets in a recruitment cycle with him 2 months later. She doesn't want to join because she's saying she wants to get married and have babies. Crazy. that a girl at 17 wants to get married and have babies when she grows up. I mean, God forbid, right? Can't do that in the Sea Org, though. You can't have babies. You can get married at 15 to a 40-year-old, but don't have kids. And Trevor screams at her, says, get the fuck out of here, you fucking whore, and go have your fucking babies, you worthless piece of shit. Leaves her crying. She comes back home to me crying, and I'm like, I mean, I was shaking. You know? I was shaking. I wanted to kill the motherfucker.
Damn.
Yeah, so these are the things that, and this isn't unique. This is all my friends, you know?
Right.
All my friends. And if the church wants to deny this, I got proof, baby. I've got person after person to corroborate it. Right. I've got KRs with the worst, weirdest shit on it ever. In fact, I think I have that KR from Trevor Sales after that interview where he said you're no longer qualified for the Sea Org.
Is that right?
Yeah, I do. I saved a bunch of that stuff.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that is so ironic about schools being run by Scientology, and I realize they're not literally run by Scientology, but what's ironic about Scientologists running schools is that there is this idea that you've lived a billion, trillion lifetimes before. There's nothing you don't know how to do. You just forgot it. There's no job you've never. There's no job you've never held. There's, you know, you've been kings 100 times over. You've been president 100 times over, and so the whole idea that you have to get educated is looked almost down upon because it implies you're not already educated.
It's silly.
And really, the purpose that the schools serve is just to get someone up to the age where they can read and write and not be an idiot. You obviously have to be literate to study Scientology. It's, you know... About
10% of all kids in Scientology schools end up joining the Sea Org.
Right.
Because Sea Org members are constantly coming to the schools, waiting outside after school for specific children who they're working with. The principals are in cahoots because the principals are all usually on OT7 or something like that. And so they give you a nod and go, good luck, bud.
Right.
And they go, I hate to see you go, but you're off to a good cause. And then as a kid, I must have had this. It must have happened a dozen times, or a dozen or two times, where kids would show up, like be like, okay, that's it. Everyone pencils down. We have an announcement, and a kid, like I can think right now, like this kid Rafferty Pendry, I went to school with, or not Rafferty, his brother, David Pendry. He came to the front of the fucking class and he said, I joined the Sea Org. It's my purpose. It's the right thing. He was 14. He might still be in, but we all just sat there.
Yeah, he is. He's still in the Sea Org.
Is it David Pendry?
Yeah, he's actually I think his name is David. Yeah, he's the cramming officer at the advanced org.
Yeah, so good for him. But my point is, like, at their schools, they would end class to announce this grand occurrence, and it was at Delphi, at Renaissance Academy, it was at Clearwater Academy, it was wherever, and it was such a.
Right. You do have to be a Scientologist in good standing to work at a school that's part of ABLE, the Association for Better Living and Education, which is one of the branches of the Church of Scientology International. And maybe there's nothing controversial about that. Maybe private schools can just do what they want, and they can, you know, maybe that's not a big deal. But it's definitely true that the people who run these schools, they are, for the most part, people who are on OT7, which means they are the most answerable to the Church of Scientology. Right?
Like marionettes to the nth degree.
Right. And so the irony of having Sea Org members who are either high school dropouts or middle school dropouts going into a Scientology-run high school to recruit those people not to go to the school and to instead join the Sea Org at the behest of the Scientologists who are running the school is quite ironic.
Yeah, and those guys will go into the church, like the staff members of the school, and after every event, they'll rope you in and give you the survey of joining the Sea Org, and they'll say, write down people that you believe should be a part of the Sea Org team.
Right.
And they're constantly going, and then to finish any course or any service or any step on any part of the bridge, part of your check sheet is to go see the Sea Org recruiter and write down names of people. And if you work at a school, great. If you work at a company, great. You're going to give names of all the people, and you're going to give numbers, and then and if you get in trouble with the church, then you're going to help them recruit your friends.
Right.
Even if you're not in.
That's how you make up amends.
Yeah, even if you're not in, you're going to go help. I mean, they, anytime they would get me in trouble, I mean, I remember the first girl I hooked up with was Sophia Sweet, and I shouldn't have hooked up with her, apparently. And
So what, you got in trouble for
I
that?
had to get this whole OW write-up. I had to call my friends and make them read all the LRH policies. I'm not looking at porn for some reason, and tell them, it's not good to be promiscuous. So, I mean, yeah, that's what I got the first time I made out with a chick and felt a boobie. You know what I'm saying? It's anytime you get in trouble, ethics isn't there to help you be a better person or be happier. I mean, you of course can be happier if you handle immoral activities in your life, right? No matter how you stop doing immoral shit, you're going to be a happier person. So however Scientologists, they can make a happier person, but at the end of the day, they don't care, right? Water's water wherever it comes from. It's going to help a person who's thirsty. The difference is when they give you water, you're giving them your time and your life.
Right.
You're giving them your servitude.
Right. So you mentioned that when I had asked what was the point when you sort of crossed that line from Scientology being something that you were sort of being compelled to do as a child to maybe it being something that you felt more ownership of, that you were doing on your own determinism, that maybe you were even excited about doing or whatever.
Right.
And you mentioned 13. What was going on? What happened there?
Well, I mean, I didn't have the best last 4 years, right, with moving from LA, which I loved LA. Clearwater might as well have been hell to me. And then my parents divorcing, and then the year later, my sister joining the Sea Org in LA, and I didn't really know what that concept was, so I had to look for something, and I started going towards humor and comedy, and I don't know. I needed to make friends. I didn't have my older sister that could kind of shoo me in for friends now, and I was like a typical kid who was the victim of a divorce. I was introverted. I was stuck in my head. I wanted out, and so I started trying to figure people out, figure out how to make them laugh and all that. Right? It's typical things you go through.
So this is around you're about 13 years old and something.
Yeah, it's a typical adolescent things. I just I had a rough go as an adolescent. It's a different rough go than other people have rough goes, but it was a rough go. And I always had this thing, I really wanted to know how people ticked, I mean, I'm an individual, I had my own questions about life. And Scientology answered everything. I don't mean correctly, I'm just saying they had an answer for everything. Just because a person gives you an answer for everything doesn't mean it's the right answer. But they did know a lot about the mind and emotional tones and how to communicate to people, and how to control people, how manipulation works, how brainwashing works, right? I mean, L. Ron Hubbard kind of lays it out and says, here's how it works. And when you go and apply it on the common layman, it kind of works, right? You learn that a certain percentage of the population is in a hypnotic trance, right? Just naturally. They're just in a catatonic kind of, they'll do anything. That's why advertising works. That's why political filibustering and political carpetbagging and just talking works. It's because of that hypnotic state, right? And that people just will take commands. And so you learn these things, and I'm like, wow, this applies to sales, this applies to girls, this applies to friends, and it was working. To some degree it worked, And that's the thing about Scientology, is there's plenty of it that works. And the auditing, I had gotten a little bit, and it cheered me up, right? It had this, it was like regression therapy mixed with positive hypnosis. I don't know what you want to call it, okay. But it worked. I got happy, and it worked on other people that it worked, that it was used on, right? And so then I saw the energy, and I loved the dynamic. I think more so than anything, I loved the camaraderie. I loved that all these people had things to do, and they were out to help people, and I'd always liked to help people, right?
And this was before you were on staff, or
this is before I was on staff. I mean, I'm like 13, 14, 15.
And are you hanging around Flag, or are you hanging around the Tampa org?
Hanging around Flag.
Okay.
Yeah. No, Tampa org was like an archaic little shithole in the wall, right? With my estimation, hippies.
So you're hanging around Flag, but you're not in the Sea Org. You're a public.
I'm a public.
You're on course?
I'm on course.
Okay. And so you're just interacting on a regular basis with people your own age, studying the same things you're studying, more or less.
Yeah.
Talking the same language.
Same language. That's why it works. That's why Democrats get along with Democrats. That's why Republicans get along with Republicans. That's why a Christian goes, oh, thank God, you follow the good book and you know the word of the Lord. Praise Jesus, I'm not trying to denigrate any of these things. I'm more facetiously, putting them in the light of people go where they have commonalities. Everyone else says, oh, they're crazy, but within them, they go, oh, we got commonalities. In Scientology, there's plenty of intelligent, sane stuff,
Okay.
And then whatever's crazy is crazy. There's no questioning. I'm just saying that when you have a group of people that follow it and speak the language and the nomenclature, you don't question it. Why? You've got pretty girls here. You've got successful businessmen here. Why do I need to go outside of this?
Right.
When there's celebrities, there's a couple billionaires. There's
everything you need is right there.
Yeah, it really can't be that fucked up if all these people are killing it in here, and they are. They're against drugs and they're against doing anything illegal.
Right.
And it wasn't like underage. It wasn't like the people there would fondle boys.
Right. Well, no, I mean, it's a great point, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to do these interviews is because society, people who read the media about Scientology, it's easy to, because all the media has a very negative slant, right?
Yeah.
And so it's easy for people to assume that negative perception that Scientology that the media gives on Scientology, that is Scientology, that's all of Scientology, and then people wonder, why the hell do people have anything to do with Scientology for so long? And it's one of the reasons I wanted to do the interviews was to give a sense of what it looks like from the inside out.
Yeah.
Especially as a younger person. There's not a lot to dislike in Scientology as a younger person. You're treated like an adult.
Yeah.
You're given responsibility. Right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of young friends, cool friends, famous friends, rich friends. I mean, there's not a lot to dislike being a young person in Scientology as a public. Now, as a Sea Org member, that might be different. As a staff member, it might be a little different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but at that point in your life, you're 13 years old. Your experience with Scientology courses is pretty decent, right?
Yeah.
And nothing to complain about particularly.
Like I said.
You had to put up with the recruiting.
Like I said, I felt like I was becoming a very smart person, right? I mean, the study tech, they teach you to look up your words, and so you start getting like a collegiate lexicon in your head.
Right.
By the age of 14, 15, you can run circles around high school graduates when it comes to vocabulary.
Right.
And so you're really good at studying and learning things, but you're really good at ignoring anything that has anything to do anti your religion, right?
Right.
But also, when you're a kid, people stay out of your business, right? Like, no one's coming at you like, you need to stop believing in that. Adults stay out of kids' business, right? So you're kind of cloistered and you're protected.
So you mean like you're not being harassed the fact that you're a Scientologist?
Yeah, no one's bringing up Xenu when you're a kid, and the adults try to keep it quiet when they talk about aliens, but aliens are plausible, right? We live in a galaxy, and there's hundreds of billions of other galaxies with hundreds of billions of stars, and for someone to think like we're the only intelligent life is just, it's not pragmatic, right?
Right.
I'm not out there speaking on behalf of aliens. I'm just saying it's easier to make sense that there's aliens out there. So when L. Ron Hubbard or the scripture talks about aliens or past lives and all that, it's plausible. You know what I'm saying? I can't prove that it doesn't exist.
Right.
I mean, certain things, obviously.
Well, I want to get into this more later on, but I will throw it in here. One of the things I wanted to address, based on all the media coverage following Going Clear, right?
Yeah.
Because Going Clear does discuss the Xenu story. Mm-hmm. There's a lot, I heard a lot of chatter of, how can Scientologists believe that? And one thing I wanted to let the public know, because I haven't heard anyone specifically say it, is 99% of the Scientologists in the world have absolutely never heard of the Xenu story.
No.
I mean, literally.
No.
It's not. That is the secret. That is the key. That is the key secret. That is the most. Scientologists believe that if that data if you're exposed to that data before you have done OT1 and OT2 and attested to the state of clear, you will die.
You'll get or at least
you will die of pneumonia.
On the very low end, you'll get pneumonia. A really terrible case of
Right. And LRH said that he himself almost died while researching that material and was very carefully booby-trapped so that no one could ever discover it, but somehow he did.
He broke his back.
Broke his arm.
But not in climbing a mountain, in auditing himself.
Suffering the mental trauma.
On the e-meter in cans, the amount of mental charge broke his back.
Right. And what's interesting...
I read it hammered.
What's that?
I wrote it hammered out of my mind at 21. and I didn't do anything for him.
And what's interesting is there is no data in Scientology where he attempts to explain why he is supposed to be the only one capable of researching and discovering the truth. It's not like in other religions where it's like, well, because he is the prophet, because God spoke to him, because he went on the mountain, or because he spoke to the bush. There is no part in Scientology where he actually tries to explain why it is. In fact, in the policy you mentioned earlier, Keeping Scientology Working, Series 1, he says, we will not speculate as to why I was able to rise above the bank, which is another term for the reactive mind. He specifically says, we're not going there.
Yeah.
And that, as someone who'd been a Scientologist for the majority of my life, I'm almost embarrassed to say it never raised a red flag.
well, for me, it everything raised a red flag. You understand? But I also wasn't just going to jump up at the first red flag and go, this is bullshit. I mean, I did individual things. I had plenty of conversations. I mean, I remember spending 3 months word clearing, and getting cramming and debugging done on Science of Survival. Right. Because there was a sentence that just, per the laws of English, shouldn't be written that way. Like, there was a paragraph that didn't make sense at all.
Well, it was the editor's fault.
Apparently.
Now you know.
Yeah, but then I would just be like, this can't make sense.
Right.
And they go, what don't you understand? I was like, I have literally... Anyway, so... But there was things I didn't agree with the entire time.
Right. Oh, so let me jump in. I wanted to expound on this point a little further. So not only was I on staff for 10 to 12 years in a regular org, but then I was in the Sea Org for 4 years. And then a year and a half of my time in the Sea Org was spent working in one of the organizations that delivered OT3 to paying public. And part of my job was actually to get people through the final steps so that they could actually start on their OT levels. And I still had never heard the word Xenu, heard of a body thetan, heard of the OT3 story, until I had already been out of the Sea Org for a couple years and worked up the nerve to read something online about it. Like, people don't actually understand, that a secret could be that well kept.
Yeah. Oh, it's well kept. I mean, I heard about it once I joined staff because I had a unique position on staff as what they call a body router, which is pretty much a raw public recruiter. I stood on a street corner and got people to go in the door, take a personality test, do a stress test. I was one of those.
So you were on the cutting edge.
You were the
bleeding edge.
I was the epitome of those fucking creepy Scientologists. And but that was the trick, put someone out there who was gregarious and personable and have them get people in for personality tests. We thought we had the key to the universe. That was really what we thought we had. And at one point, and plenty of people, that was around the time South Park had come out, like within that year, and they would walk by and go, "Hail Xenu," or "You guys believe in Xenu?" Or the people would like really stop and want to have an earnest conversation with me and be like, like when you eventually get to like OT3, they're going to tell you about a warlord who dropped you in a volcano. And I was like, and it just made them look crazier.
Yeah.
Because I would go to the church and I could ask anyone I knew and they'd go, "Oh, it's all crap." That shit. Because they would hide it from me. Any adult, any friend, any parent, anybody would hide it from you because they would think that you would get fucking pneumonia.
Right.
So whatever that had.
But so it's almost it's a double-edged sword here. Not only is there the indoctrination that you're going to personally suffer a negative result from being exposed to that data, but if the ethics officer or the ethics section or the ethics department, if you're a public who's on the OT levels or who has done the OT levels, and it's found out that you have told anything about a body thetan or whatever to anybody, you will be forever banned from ever doing further OT levels. So it's like, on the one hand, they're saying, it's for other people's benefit that you don't tell them, but also we're basically going to, and as a Scientologist, that's important to you. You're basically throwing away your entire eternity.
Your eternity.
You even acknowledge that it's true. That's why Tommy Davis, in his interview, when he's sitting there with Martin Bashir, he was forbidden to even acknowledge that there is such a word as Xenu or whatever, because
you have to understand eternity. So to put it into context, heaven, right? God's grace or favor for all of time.
Right.
In other contexts, this is your eternity. This is trillions of more lifetimes of being incarnated into life forms or conscious beings. That's gone if you go and divulge or promulgate any OT stuff. So you don't do it. You just literally force yourself to not think about it.
Right.
But there's other crazy stuff that L. Ron Hubbard will talk about in his lectures that are just like, huh? And it can't make sense. He'll make these wild claims. I remember listening to a lecture more than once. A couple times I've heard it in the congresses he did. He'd be talking about mind tricks. And he'd be like, and this would be coming right after he would tell everyone, like, we have these new processes which you won't have to wear your glasses anymore. Everyone just leave those stupid spectacles at the door when you leave here. No one's going to need your eyeglasses anymore. These new processes are make you OT enough. You'll be able to see without. You'll probably have X-ray vision. I have, to this day, to see one Scientologist who doesn't have to wear glasses anymore due to auditing.
No, it's
LASIK. That works.
No. It's the big cognitive dissonance, and
yeah.
I mean, there's so many subjects I want to talk about.
Worse than that, my last thing is one of the craziest things is he said I could move vases around with my mind if I wanted to, but those are just parlor tricks, and no one wants to see that. And I sat there. I don't want to fucking see it. I would love to fucking see that. Right. And then I would start going home, and I would start asking OTs, right, when I was starting to become a prick. And I said, here's a fucking toothpick. Move it with your mind. 1/4 inch, right? Up to this point, you grew up around Flag. You hear OTs. Every hurricane that didn't hit Clearwater, because we get plenty of hurricanes in the Gulf, it was the OTs that postulated it or decided and moved it away, right? Like Katrina, that was supposed to hit Clearwater. You should have heard the OTs. That was supposed to devastate and destroy Clearwater. No, but they postulated it off, and they're sorry it hit New Orleans.
But it was the greatest good.
It was the greatest good that it hit New Orleans, and it didn't hit the Scientology, because Scientology is the universe's only hope. It was. So these are the things that you listen to, and then if you bring it up to people, they go, well, what's your misunderstood word? What word don't you understand there? I was like, probably moving shit with your mind. I don't understand that whole sentence.
Right. You know, and I'm not sure how we'll edit all this up to make this all sort of chronologically relevant, but you mentioned the whole thing of LRH saying, oh, you're not going to need your glasses. Yeah, there's no Scientologist that you've met who, have ever met that standard or achieved that. And
yeah, I mean, I got rid of my glasses, but it's because I wear contacts.
I got LASIK.
Yeah.
The auditing, it didn't work. I had to get LASIK. No.
It's all right, man. I'm cool with contacts.
But here's the thing. The way those things are explained away, right? The reasons why you don't see people who've achieved what LRH promised people would achieve with Scientology, right? Is because there's this idea that all of the auditing that's available up through OT8, that there's still like up through OT15 or OT22, depending on which bridge you look at, that there's all these unreleased OT levels.
Yeah, really quick message on that.
Yeah.
Watch the LRH death event where David Miscavige holds up OT9 or something, or like the cliff notes of what LRH is now working on.
Right.
It's fucking numbers, man. It's sheet after sheet of like double and triple digit numbers.
Well, they were talking about like how many years ago on the track he was researching or whatever, something like that, right? So, but the reason I'm mentioning this point right now is because it goes along with that idea that 99% of the Scientologists have never heard the Xenu story.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's that. But there's also the fact that 99%, well, 100% of the Scientologists do not know that there are no more OT levels above OT8 that are waiting to be released. And that's part of the, it's part of the con. It's part of the con. It's the carrot that everyone is waiting for, that they've been promised, that they've been told for the last since 1986 or earlier exists. So you combine these two factors. That one, they don't know what's on the OT levels. They don't know that we're promising you all these super power and godlike abilities, but the way you get there is by telepathically auditing out body things for the next 10 years. Like, Scientologists don't know that. And then a lot of Scientologists know people who have done all the auditing out there, done up to OT8, and they know that these people are nothing special. But they sort of park that to the side, like that's not a red flag to them, because they're like, but they've only done OT8, and OT8's the first real OT level.
Yeah, they say
so it's all
like
justified.
Prepares you for the super mega stuff, and
right.
then they have all these requirements for them to have all these X amount of money-making orgs and sized orgs and X amount of Scientologists on their OT levels to be able to release the next one. So there's all these things that incentivize Scientologists to push the expansion of Scientology so that they can get this carrot that doesn't exist.
Right.
And OTs know that they don't have OT powers. They just... And it's funny.
They're hoping.
Right before I got declared, I had these... all my friends are asking me. I had a lot of friends, and they were individually or at different times asking me, like, what's going on, and why are you wayward? And The strangest conversations you could ever fucking imagine that you could have with people.
Well, like, don't you care about your eternity?
Yeah, like, so I'm stopping by to pick up this phone from my buddy Chris Kajeltson, and his own mother passed away of cancer, and she was, OT 8, God rest her soul. She was a lovely lady, and he was a lovely guy, and but there you go. And OT is not supposed to get cancer, is not supposed to die of that, But there's multiple OTs like that. Nancy Cartwright's husband jumped off of a bridge, or fiance jumped off a bridge and commit suicide. Another OT 8.
Was he an OT?
Yeah, he was OT 7. Yeah, and this was like in the last 6 months. What was it? Rex, some guy named Rex.
Rex Fowler.
Yeah, he shot his partner in the head. Right?
Yeah.
And he was OT 7. He shot his partner in the head over some financial irregularities, right?
No, Rex's son is a good friend of mine. We were in New York together.
When I was in rehab, I was in Narconon rehab at 21 for blow. There was an OT 5 there for pills.
In a Narconon?
Yeah, it was just chilling. He ended up having to go back to flag because they didn't know he got into Narconon.
OTs are not supposed to be in a Narconon.
They're not supposed to be on drugs.
No.
I mean, I was a 21-year-old that just got out of a cult. I had every right to do drugs.
Right.
Yeah, it was like part of the prescription.
So it's almost funny that there's, in a way, such a simple answer to that overarching question that I started out with is, why do people stay for so long when the public, their outside perception of Scientology is nothing but crazy space alien cult? It's one thing to believe in aliens, like you said. I'm kind of in the camp. It's quite plausible. You can't just knock. I mean, the number of stars, the number of planets, but that's not my point.
You can allow it.
It's one thing to believe in aliens. It's another thing to say that the whole cause of pain and suffering and immoral activity and irrational behavior
of alien souls
is billions of body thetans, disembodied, souls, whether they're alien or not, disembodied souls that are stuck to your body, and you're going to spend the next 10 years telepathically waking these things up, and that is what everyone who's OT7 and 8, OT7 that
10 years.
That's what they've been doing. That's the big secret. Like, that is why people stay for so long, because they don't know that. And by the time you've gone through that path, you've spent $500,000 to $1 million, and your employers are Scientologists, and if you're a business owner, your customers are Scientologists, and your kids are Scientologists, and sometimes it's just easier to live and let live. Like, who cares? Who cares if it's crazy? Who cares if they want your money? Christians give to the Christian churches, Catholics give to the Catholic church. Like, eventually it just becomes something that it's like, it's easier just to keep going.
Yeah, and no one understands it. That's the thing, is no one gets it.
No one gets what?
OT, right? Even the OTs don't get OTs. Even the kids that I grew up with, no one understood it. They wanted to, though. What they understood was the definition, right? It's as if it's like this. If I told you, I said, dude, I can fly, and you go, no, you can't. No one can fly. I go, I can, and jump out this window and fly. I could convince you I could fly. You might even believe I could fly. Doesn't mean I can fly. Once I jump off a building, I'm gonna fucking die, right? But so LRH defines these definitions of OT and the ability to nip and all that. But my point is, no one understands it. Like, when I talked to my friend Chris that last time to pick up that phone, he said, Nick, aren't you worried about your eternity? I said, dude.
Last time I checked, I had a lot of time left on that clock.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know how to gauge that. I don't know how to respond to that. He goes, but Nick, I'm worried about you. And I said, I'm sorry. And he goes, well, I go, dude, have you ever seen someone move anything with their mind? Have you ever seen an OT power do anything? I said, your dad's a great guy, but it's not like he makes a couple $100,000 a year. That's not more than like middle class America. I go, most Scientologists are just normal people, normal good people, but they think they're OTs. When a traffic light stops, they go, my postulates are working. or with the rain stops, they go, hey, like, amazing. I heard and I heard like success stories on stage at Flag where the guy goes, I had this girlfriend. Oh, so this guy finished OT7. Let me tell this real quick. So this guy's he's finishing OT7. He's giving his wins. And he's on stage and he goes, so my girlfriend's headed across the Courtney Campbell to go catch a flight, right? And she's about to be late for a flight, so she's got to book it. She gets a flat tire. She calls me. She goes, blah blah. My car broke down. And like I got a flat, and now I'm gonna miss my flight. He goes, baby, we're gonna stop time. He goes, what? He goes, we're going to stop time, honey. And he goes, I know, it's crazy, but that's how postulates work. And everyone's like, ha, chuckle, chuckle, go LRH, And I'm sitting there like, anyone? So he goes, and she goes, what do you mean? He's like, I stopped time for you. And she's like, okay. So anyway, AAA comes and fixes the tire and shit, and then she ends up getting to the airport like an hour late. The flight was delayed.
Right. And that was because of a postulate.
Let me tell you, dude, I have traveled to just about every city in the U.S. 2 or 3 times, and South America and the Caribbean. About half of all my flights I've ever taken are fucking delayed, right?
Right.
But he goes, and the flight was delayed, and everyone just goes, all right.
Oh, because he's talking at graduation.
And then it was like 2 LRH, and everyone just clapped, and I was like sitting there like,
praise Jesus.
Well, I just could tell myself, I'm not Nicole, I'm not Nicole.
So, but here's what's funny is that sounds crazy that a Scientologist would think that something like that was due to his postulate. And yet it's pretty much the same as people who claim that, they pray every night before bed for like 30 years, and every once in a while when something they prayed about goes their way, it was because their prayer was answered. But then it's like, well, what the hell happened the rest of the times?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. but Scientologists talk about making your postulates stick. And so that's just what's wrong. When you make a postulate and it doesn't happen.
You didn't do it right.
Your postulate didn't stick.
Yeah.
And this is part of kind of the sales pitch for going up the bridge and doing more auditing is your postulates stick, which is another way of saying you're more in control of matter, energy, space, and time, right? Because you intended something to happen, and in the real world you made it happen.
Yeah.
So you could say that becoming more and more OT means your postulates just happen. And it's funny, a lot of these success videos that are played at events, they've started to leak on the internet. And you have like one of these 5 or 10 minute video segments where Scientologists will just riff on their wins and whatnot. And you'll hear them talking about making my postulates stick. And that's exactly what that means. I intended something to happen and it happened. So I'm OT, which therefore means Scientology works. Right? Like it's kind of a self-feeding sort of thing.
It's confirmation bias, right?
Exactly.
When you're looking for it, you'll get it. And it's like when someone can't find the reason to their problem, you tell them it's X, and then you can show them it's because of this, right? It's how they get you to disconnect from people in your life, right? They go, look at all these things wrong in your life.
Right.
Haven't they all happened while you've known this person? And you're like, yeah.
He could be the cause of all these conditions.
Yeah, it's not because of your broken ankle that you can't run. Your dad's been suppressing you from running, and that's why he always told you to walk or something. I mean, it's on the level of being that stupid. Right. Chris told me, he goes, Nick, I know we're not supposed to show OT powers, but when I go OT, I'm going to show you my powers. And I said, Chris,
thanks,
you have a good day, dude. And that was the last time I ever talked to him. That was a lot of my friends, man.
Right.
I asked them all. I said, "Can you point to an OT?" I said, "I'm not knocking the wins and the success and the joy and the progress you can make in Scientology. You can in just a simple therapeutic, as a simple therapeutic tool,
right,
or educational tool in simple psychology,
right."
I mean, there's a lot of other psychology and therapies out there. It's a very good and clean one. You don't have to. They do have a good theory. There is too much drugging, and there's not enough solution finding. But the rest of the world knows that.
Right.
We're in America the ones taking too many psychiatric drugs. Not the rest of the world, but
it's funny. You talk about the anti-drug stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I think to the public, to the outward-facing public, Scientology likes to use the drug education stuff that they do and the Narconon stuff that they do, which. I'm sure I know plenty of people who have gotten clean by going through Narconon. You can knock the system if you want, but you can knock any system. So, but the drug education stuff, the Narconon stuff, there's some educational programs out there. The church likes to hang their hat on this is how we are a force for good in the world, but internally, Scientology and Scientologists will say, those things are actually worthless. That's actually a waste of time to do those things because there's only one reason for any negative condition on Earth, and that is the reactive mind. Mm-hmm. And the only solution is to audit people, not to educate them, not to get them off drugs, but to audit them and get rid of the reactive mind, and then to go OT so you can be fully at cause over the world and your universe.
Right.
And so, but my point there is, even internally, Scientologists believe that there is only one answer, and the reason Scientology is the greatest good is because of auditing, because of how auditing frees people. It's got all this other stuff is just PR.
Well, but L. Ron Hubbard admits it's PR. He goes all these things from like anything able, Criminon, Narconon, whatever non,
right.
And then this, applied scholastics. He calls them all stepping stones.
Right.
They're all just avenues that you can get into the church from, right?
It's just to get people to
and
equate the name L. Ron Hubbard with something.
And the way to happiness, and they hide behind it.
Right.
And the way to happiness, if that's what you need to change your life, you are so fucked already, man. If you need to be told to brush your teeth and to not murder people and to not drink in excess, if these are the things you need to fucking read to then be a good person, you really need a lot more fucking help than Scientology.
True. Now, here's the evidence that even the Church of Scientology doesn't believe that the way to happiness reduces crime or makes a safe environment. Because their main Sea Org base is located in downtown Hollywood, on Vermont and Sunset Boulevard. And the neighborhood is so unsafe, Sea Org members aren't allowed to walk the 3 or 4 blocks between. Some of the Sea Org members live in a building down the street. I know a Sea Org member who literally got shot while standing outside the building, and that's fine. This stuff happens. But if Scientology believed that booklet was the cure for criminality and whatnot, and if they cared about society, don't you think they would just be handing out that booklet 8 hours a day, 365 days a year, so that Sea Org members can... But that's how you know that the Church of Scientology does not care about those social betterment programs, and it doesn't even believe in it.
And then Narconon, I knew the executive director and the DED of Narconon, the DED.
Locally or internationally?
The Arrowhead.
Oh, right.
And that thing is so beat to shit.
Is that when you were in rehab, you were at Narconon Arrowhead?
Yeah, okay. And there was like 170 students, but ever since then, ever since Going Clear and all that, they're like. And by the way, almost every single one of them relapsed, including me, right? But whatever, shit happens. My point is that Narconon, it does have a decently workable program, but they claim a 70% success rate, which is criminal. It's actually fatal that they do that because they have maybe a 5 or 6% success rate. I can give you the name of a dozen staff members I'm still in touch with that have left since, and they say, look, no one there believes it. We were all just told to pitch that because it sounded good.
Yeah, that's true.
Because the truth is their success rate isn't higher than AA. I mean, it's a good program, though. I mean, but they lie out their ass, and then the proof is in the stats. Narconon has like 20 students right now. Yeah, and they have for the last year.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't have a beef with the Narconon program. I think the only reason Narconon...
No, I have a beef with them lying to people and making them think there's a 70% chance of their child getting off a drug.
Oh, totally.
When there's a 5% chance. There's just a big difference,
Oh, I agree with you 100%.
And so that's where I think it's criminal, the actual program. But it's the same point. Al Capone was a piece of shit, but he started the first soup kitchen in Chicago. Does that make him a good guy? Right. Maybe to the guy that wants soup, you know?
That's great analogy.
My point is that they want to nitpick little things, right?
Right.
And then when a person like me or my mom leaves, I don't know what they found on my mom. With me, they're like, he drank and did drugs. And I'm like, you fucking enslaved me in a cult. Did you miss that fucking part for the first 23 years of my life? Drinking and drugs were the best decision of my life up until that point. It was the first real thing in my life. But they pull out your folder. They pull out all the caustic and the evil things about you. Then they say, look at the church. Look at all it's done. But at this point, they can't even laud their successes in terms of successful, viable people. They adjudicate their success in more buildings.
Right.
Look at these big buildings we built. Well, let me tell you something about Christianity. In the Crusades, they killed about 100 million people, but they built some of the greatest buildings in the world.
Right.
They started out as a cult too.
Yeah.
It's just it's all relative. Right. It's all an existentialistic problem that people really need to pick apart because it's when you talk to a Scientologist, it's the most frustrating, psychotic conversation of your life. It's just your IQ drops by the sentence. Because the last conversation I had with this kid that I got my Eagle Scout with, Patrick DiVenuti, he tried to fight me at a bar because he said, the church showed me everything in your folders. And I said, dude, you're hammered and you're trying to pitch Scientology to me. And he's like, why'd you attack the church? And I was like, I didn't. I actually ran and they followed me. And he came out, he followed me outside of a bar and he said, do you like study tech? And there was 6 of my friends around me. We were having a smoke. And I was like, do you fucking know what you're doing right now? He's like, answer me. Clearing words is good, isn't it? And I was like, you've lost your fucking mind, Patrick.
Right. Well, there's ways that Scientologists defend Scientology to other Scientologists, and there's ways that Scientologists defend Scientology to the outside world. And in my experience, when they feel like someone's already left the reservation, You can no longer defend Scientology by trying to talk about, eternity and, prison planets and shit. You have to. They just hang it on. They hold
on to whatever they can hold on to.
If we can help one child in one neighborhood not go to prison by educating, then it justifies everything else. I'm like, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
No, not really.
Well, no, the truth is, and then we can go on to the next subject here, but the truth is, anyone can have Scientology without needing the organization. It's just like everyone can follow God without going to a church.
Right.
You can practice the Bible. You can apply the 10 Commandments. People can be good by being good. You don't need to ascribe to something. Scientology is a technology. It's a therapy. It's Freud's regression therapy. All these things you can read, learn, and do.
Right.
But Scientology makes it seem like you have to have our stamp of approval, right? They put so much effort into it. And so they put so much control to get so much money out of that, and every Scientologist innately knows you don't fucking need the church to be a Scientologist.
Well, that's another reason why I wanted to be able to talk on camera with a bunch of people who were in Scientology for a very long time, were very, very deep believers, and have left and are now on a whole range of, on a whole wide spectrum of beliefs as far as whether all of Scientology is bad or whether some of it's good and some of it's bad. Because I know from the viewpoint of people who are still on the inside, it's very easy to paint everybody with the same brush. You're either with us or against us is how Scientologists
it's a black and white place.
Are trained to think, right? And my thing is, I actually have no opinion at all that auditing is bad or that the gains and wins that I had in my auditing and courses are not real. It's more like
people.
It's like you can help people a variety of ways, and you can improve people, and you can make someone happy. But if you're keeping people in the organization by promising them something that is absolutely a lie and a con, it doesn't mean that the wins you had weren't real. It means you're being lied to and conned.
Yeah, well, it's like
both of those things can be true.
Yeah, well, it's like this. It's like if I get I got a cousin. He wants to start working out and putting on some muscle, right? So it's one thing if I get him in the gym and start, tell him to change his diet and get healthy, right? Now, if I was telling him while he was working out, I said, "You're going to be able to fly at the end of this."
Right.
He goes, "Really?" I go, "Yeah." I mean, I can fly, but I'm not going to show you. Because you just get really apathetic and you'd never want to work out again because you'd be so jealous of me.
Right.
And he'd be like, "Wow, amazing."
Right.
And I'd be like, "Yeah.
Right.
You can fly." And he'd be like, "Okay." So he's working out every day in the gym and he's getting healthier and healthier and he's looking better. And he's going, "How do I look?" I go, "You look great." And the world goes, "You look pretty good. You don't look different than a lot of other pretty happy people, but you look good." And I go, "You're going to fly one day, dude." And he'll never fly. But he'll keep working out thinking he can fly. I mean, that's Scientology. You can be a little happier.
Right. Now someone could say,
but you're never going to
come
fly.
along and say, but you've helped him. You've deceived him, but you've helped him. You've helped him get healthier. You've helped him. But you had to deceive him in order to keep him.
But since his parents said that your trainer, your cousin, me, is crazy, because they did that, I made him disconnect from his parents because they don't believe that he'll ever fly. And that's the level of Scientology is that when the church, when I stopped wanting to be a part of this, I said, you know what, it isn't worth, because I had a lot of situations where they just wouldn't leave me alone. They took away my friends, and anytime they wanted, they were trying to make me into a puppet, and I just wasn't a very good puppet. And they'd done it for so long that I said, I just don't want a part of this, But they couldn't have that. No, because who wouldn't want to fly? Who wouldn't want wings?
Right.
That's crazy.
And you're trained to believe, and to stick with your analogy, that if someone has had a taste, and they decide they don't want to fly, they're evil. They have ovates. They probably do not want others to fly as well.
Right.
And that is because they are probably suppressive, and you should stay away from those people.
Right. So what happened was when I just walked away and I said, "You guys are nuts," then they told all my friends that I was attacking the church and that I was friends with people attacking the church. Well, I was friends with people attacking the church. I didn't really care though. I was friends with them. That was my crime, being friends.
Right.
And so my friends came at me, and I had an ex-girlfriend from Sweden Skype me in the most broken, angry English ever. Like, "Don't ever attack the church. They're good people. They help." Like, I was getting the weirdest messages from everywhere, and I was like, I'm not attacking the church. Right. I just don't agree with it. That's not true. They told me you're attacking it. And I go,
right.
I didn't attack it.
Well, by definition, and this is another way that, I say Scientologists, maybe it applies more to Sea Org members, but I think it probably applies to public as well. They are trained to equate continuing to associate with someone means you are, by that very act, endorsing anything they could ever say or do. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, you have to immediately condemn someone. I mean, this only really applies if someone says something negative about the church, right? It's not enough to say, we disagree, let bygones be bygones. No. By continuing to offer your friendship, you are feeding into their power, and you're not doing enough to make their lives miserable. Like, disconnecting in part is supposed to be almost like a too gruesome. Mm-hmm. Like, what's the worst thing I could do to you to make you rethink your actions? And one of those things is withhold my friendship.
It's tough love. It's on the same level of intervention. It's right. In your opinion, if someone doesn't agree with Scientology, they're addicted to drugs, and it's the drug of wog world. Wog is a worldly oriented gentleman. A wog is, in other terms, Harry Potter would use, a muggle, someone who does not believe in lay magic.
Right.
So, and when you agree with wogs, which I call people, then you're fucked. And to show you're fucked, you're going to be disconnected from, and everyone's going to shun you, legitimately shun you. Like,
I want to do a whole. I want to do a whole interview on the subject of using this word "wog."
Yeah.
And
we can go on
what
to
it
the next
means
question.
And everything. Okay, so let's revisit this one question from earlier. So I want to examine at what point, like as a child, Scientology is something you're sort of compelled to do at a younger age, and I want to know at what point for you it sort of switched gears to being something you were kind of being compelled or maybe forced to do, to something, or something changes and now it's something you're doing on your own, like because you wanted to. Suddenly you saw value or something like that.
I mean, 15 or when I was 13, 14, 15, it was gradually you learn more and then you apply it, but it works. A lot of it works. A lot of the basic ideas that he stole and repackaged work.
Was there a certain course where things changed, or was it like...
Science of Survival was really cool. They did this thing about the emotional tone scale where they showed all these different like emotional tones that people can be at, ranging, all the way down to body death, even lower than that, but we won't go into that, up till like serenity of beingness. And it had, apathy, grief, fear, covert hostility, anger, antagonism, boredom, conservative, cheerful.
Yeah.
And so you could read people and label them here, and then it said if you go a half a point above people, you can control them. And I found this fascinating because I wanted to learn about people. And then it showed the components of understanding, which were affinity, reality, and communication. I said, that's simple enough, right? And so I found if you can raise the affinity of someone or find something to agree with, it helps the communication, you like them more. To whatever degree I understood it and applied it, it was working, and me and my friends got along well. I was a very active kid. I played a lot of piano. I played a lot of soccer. I kickboxed for years. Rock climbed. I was in Boy Scouts. I was all over the place. I was a happy kid. You know what I'm saying? And Scientology was this really good group of euphoric people.
So a lot of happy kids running around, studying the same stuff, talking the same language.
Yeah.
So if reading Science of Survival was a turning point for you, was it on a particular course that you did? Was it an extension course?
It was PTSD. Well, I read it. I think I read it.
On the PTSSP course?
On the PTSSP course.
Okay, so the PTSSP course is where you learn all about suppressive people and...
Yeah, you might as well just call it like the science of sociopathy or sociopath, but it's a very skewed version because it teaches you about sociopaths, but it mixes in every idea with, like, no matter what a sociopath is, if they don't like Scientology, they're a sociopath.
I'm glad you said that.
All roads lead back to not liking Scientology.
Right.
It teaches you how to spot sociopaths, but it's kind of like you can spot Henry Kissinger and Dillinger, and you can spot Hitler and Mussolini and Stalin. Yeah, it teaches you about those guys. You're like, oh, good. I'm really glad I could pick out dictators who support fascism and kill people.
And by the way, anyone who says something negative about Scientology, they're in the same category.
And so, no, they literally categorize like Henry Kissinger with anyone who doesn't like Scientology. So when I was like, I don't like Scientology anymore, which wasn't necessarily a true statement. I didn't don't care if people like Scientology. I didn't like the organization. I didn't like that they tried to kill me, but when I was a little baby, when I was a little fetus, I found that offensive when I grew up.
Right.
And I
well, you probably did something to pull that in.
I did something in the past lifetime. But, so yeah, I mean, but on that course, I learned about that, and then, I mean, at that point, I thought anyone who disagreed with Scientology was a fucking sociopath, so I didn't have any qualms with the course.
Right.
It was weird, some of the stuff on the course, but you kind of, it's like a bad relationship. If the sex is good, the fact that she punches you in the face after dinner is like, you know? So with Scientology, it's like, hey, some of the stuff's cool, but then I get put into dark rooms and 6 grown-ass men tell me about the end of the world and Martians worried about Scientology saving the planet and that they're going to attack. And then I go home and it's really hard for me to want to be into porn like the rest of the kids are. You kind of got to take the bad with the good.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I had a great question I was going to ask you right there.
I left you speechless.
Okay, no, so
I left you speechless. I have that effect on grown men.
I remember. So it sounds like it kind of gradually builds. There were no particular negative experiences growing up. It gradually builds on itself of good people, good activities, good data you're studying. Seems helpful in life, more or less. I mean, kind of a self-affirming way.
Yeah, it's a way to self-realize in a way.
Okay, maybe structures a bit how you think about people in the world. And then, but gradually it becomes something you're doing on your own. There wasn't like a sudden turning point for you.
Yeah, no, it was gradually. Yeah, and it just becomes something where, like I said, it teaches you everything about life and people to a degree, right? Because
it teaches you a lot about life and people.
There's so much more to life and people than any one subject can, go over.
Sure.
I mean, even Fromm on Being Human writes a great book,
right?
And or that book on How to Win Friends and Influence People, or Napoleon Hill's, writings, or Albert Camus' essays. I mean, like, everyone has something interesting about human nature, but it's a holistic approach. So Scientology just makes it seem like this is it. The problem with Scientology is it took all these good ideas about people and the mind, and then it just put in there, basically, Scientology is the only answer to the mind, and anyone that doesn't like Scientology is a enemy of the mind.
Right.
So that's where Scientology goes wrong, is that you feel like you're dedicated and you can only do Scientology to be human.
It's almost like if Scientology just remained a philosophy, probably would have worked out okay.
It probably would have had a following. Probably would have had a meetup.
It's this whole transition to, now it's a religion, and first it was like religion, wink, wink, but then it became religion with religious fervor, and then it became, real zealotry, and it just, it went a little too far in that direction. Okay, so you never ended up joining, we discussed before how you were recruited for the Sea Org while you were in school and stuff like that. You never joined the Sea Org, but you did at one point join staff in Tampa. Mm-hmm. So how did you get recruited for staff? What closed you? What made you make that decision?
2 ultra dipshits, right? One was named Lynn Irons, and his claim to fame was spreading Scientology in Russia with the help of Bud Reichel. Bud Reichel won a Freedom Medal Award. Lynn Irons did not. The reason Lynn Irons did not is because his wife was dying of cancer here in the U.S., and he was cheating on her with an ex-KGB agent in Russia. But he has the balls to say that I'm an evil person, right? So he was the executive director of Tampa Org, okay? And then Tom Cummins, right? He owns like energy rooms and stuff like that. And the fucked up thing is he walks around, trying to spread do-gooders. That motherfucker in his early 20s trafficked cocaine, right? I'm talking
that was before Scientology.
Yeah, whatever. So I did cocaine after Scientology. I think I'm more justified. And I didn't sell it. I just consumed it. I stimulated the economy. He took jobs away from America. That piece of shit.
Okay,
but anyway, so
Bud Reichel and Lynn Irons.
No. Lynn Irons and Tom Cummins. Oh. They closed me on joining staff because they say you're going to be such a great addition to the team. And they just blew up my ego, right?
So at this point, were these guys executive director of Day and Foundation, or were they both in one org?
Lynn Irons was executive director of Foundation. Tom Cummins was the PES, the Public Executive Secretary. So he ran all the public outreach, basically.
All right, so let me jump in real quick. So the orgs, some orgs are divided up into 2 separate orgs. There's the Day Org, Monday through Friday, 9 to 6, and the Foundation Org, Monday through Friday, 7 to 10, and then Saturday and Sunday. So Foundation is essentially the night and weekend shift. Okay, so you're saying one of these guys is the executive director?
They're both Foundation.
They're both Foundation.
But one of them is the executive director, the other is the public executive secretary at the time.
Okay, so he's over Div 6, which is getting new people into the organization.
Yeah, and at the time I was the tutor of the Duggan children, Bob Duggan's kids.
Okay.
I only did it for like a couple months.
That was when they still lived here in Clearwater?
Yeah, I was a tutor. I was just tutoring for Clearwater Academy. And then I had just gotten my Eagle Scout, and I was working at a school. And I wanted to do something big with my life, and at that point I had like such a fucking crazy idea of like we were all hardcore about being Scientologists.
And how old were you at this point?
18.
Okay.
I just turned 18. And so after an event, they pull me into the Hibiscus, the restaurant at the Fort Harrison, and they close me, and I say, fine, I'll start. Oh, such a stupid decision. But
they basically signed a 2.5-year contract?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then basically they tell me I'm going to be the public contact secretary. I'm going to be over Division 6A, right? So where Tom Cummins is over 3 divisions, I'm going to be over one of them.
Right.
Well, about day 2 on staff, I get told that I can't be that position. I have to go pick a different position. So they're showing me all the positions available. This guy named Grant Masonis, right? Real mousy computer nerd, but he's in the public contact division. And he shows me what they do, and they send out tens of thousands of pieces of promo a week. So he's showing me this binder, 3-ring binder of pieces of promo, like what the promo was they sent out, whether it was like a movie ticket to see one of their fantastic blockbuster films on the mind, or a personality test, or an invite to come in for a lecture, and then how many responses they got. I mean, they would send out 20,000 of these, 50,000. For every like 10,000 things they sent out, they got like 1 response, maybe 2, written back. And usually the response would be like... So
they're tracking the response rate on every promo piece?
Yeah, but I'm telling you, out of like every week, they would send out like 200,000 pieces of promo, and they would get like 4 responses.
And why is he showing this to you?
Because he was trying to show me the post. He was trying to get me interested. Because he was the day public contact secretary, but they're building up the foundation. So he's like, take that, and I go, so basically, you sit up here and do fucking nothing with your life. No thanks, right? So I left that, and then I get shown some other like FSM activation I see. I'm supposed to get other Scientologists to sell books and do that. I said, that sounds terrible. And so I call Tom and I go, dude, you guys spend hours getting me to do this other thing. And I was like the poster child of Scientology by then. They had me on literally posters. I was the poster child of Scientology.
And why? Why did they have you on posters?
Because I'm fucking handsome as shit.
I know, but what were the posters?
Of me with headphones on.
Oh, okay.
Reading the Congress.
Just generic, and I'm just boy on chorus.
Yeah, I'm just like stoked out of my mind to be listening to L. Ron Hubbard.
Okay.
And then I was in their Source Mag. I mean, I was like, and I just got my Eagle Scout for the Scientology Chartered Boy Scout troop. I was like, and I was running their Youth for Human Rights group. I was running their volunteer minister missions to New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Punta Gorda, Pensacola, right? I was doing all this stuff, and I was pretty much the best person in the world ever, Aaron. In the world.
Okay, so you go from being the best poster child in the world to being recruited for staff to being told you can't do the bait and switch, and then you call them up and you say, hey, what do you say?
So I'm in the org, but there's like 5 stories, no elevator, and I don't know where Tom is. I call him, I go, hey man, so I was told I was going to be the public contact secretary, and now I can't do it. I really kind of don't want to do this. He goes, get the fucking vagina out of your, or get the fucking sand out of your fucking pussy and choose a fucking post just like everyone else, Nick. This is 3 days after he told me I was like the shit, right? And then he's like so grateful I was going to be his right-hand man, and so I just got, I got downgraded. I got sent to coach. Yeah. And
something tells me that the clergy of the Catholic Church does not swear quite as much as the staff members at Scientology churches.
Yeah, and so I went to HCO, Hubbard Communications Office, the Ethics Justice Division, and I was like, I don't want to be here. I was like, can I just, like I never showed up. I've only been here for 2 days, kind of didn't join. Anyway, they pull the whole spiel, like we'll take away your friends and family if you try to leave deal, and I was like, in that sense, I'll stay. If you're gonna take away my friends and family, this place isn't so bad. I could stay here for 2.5 years. In fact, 2.5 plus a couple weeks. Who knows?
All right. So, what post did you get put onto?
Oh man, I did everything. I was the worst staff member. I was the best and worst, right? So what happened was they ended up getting me to start selling books, apparently, right? So I started working at these kiosks and the fairs, and I'm selling Dianetics books, right? I'm like, whatever. No, I felt bad. No one could understand Dianetics. I'd read it 3 times, and I kind of understood it, but I was like, no one can understand this. I was at University Mall, which University Mall in Tampa off Fowler. If your car stereo got stolen, I could pretty much get it back for you. That's what University Mall was. That was its demographic. And I was selling a book of fucking this verbose shit to people that dropped out of middle school.
Right.
It was worthless. Anyway,
selling books on the street. That's a tough job to do at an org.
Yeah, and then so that started to kind of break me down. But I was good at it, you know. I could sell like 20 books a week, which was about 10 times more than most people.
Yeah.
And then I called the CMO people, this girl named Brittany Arnold, really hot chick they had. But CMOs always hot chicks. And they had this other
It's funny how that works.
They had this other chick, Jillian Seeger. And I remember the straw that broke the camel's back. I'd only been on staff a few months. And she called me. It was my one morning off, because I never had time off. I worked Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5:30 at my job, and then I'd go to staff. It was a 40-minute drive on my motorcycle to eat, like, to these places. Actually, like an hour drive to Fowler to get over to USF area from the beach where I worked. And it was Saturday morning. I remember I got like 3 hours off. That was my only time during the week. Literally, I worked 9 to 6 on the weekends.
Right.
So I just had this one morning off, and Jillian said, "Come in. You're urgently needed." And I said, "For what?" I said, "I just want to I want to spend time with my girlfriend." She said, "Nick, this is command intention, straight from the top. You need to be here." I said, "Fuck, man, what did I get myself into?" So I get out of bed. I'm so fucking tired, man. I mean, my schedule had just been beating my ass. I drive there. I go up there. "Hi, Jillian." Oh, this is so terrible. I go up there, and she gives me a fucking stack of promo. And I go, "What is this?" She goes, "You need to go pass this out around the neighborhood."
That was urgent.
And I said, "I drove on my one little slot of time off down here to pass out promo? Why don't you do it, Jillian?" And she goes, "I'm way too qualified for that, Nick. Get out there. Don't fucking complain." I was like shaking. And I was that morning, I realized, I said, they fucking own me. It wasn't even funny. It was like, they literally fucking own me.
Right.
I was thinking, I've got nothing. They own me.
So what's interesting is that with you being at Tampa org, right? So the story you're telling, you've got a Sea Org member, right? A Commodore's messenger. Yeah. And there's a lot of altitude and authority that comes from someone who's in the CMO, in the Commodore's Messengers org. That's a much higher stress environment that you were dealing with in the Tampa org than you would find in any other org where there aren't really Sea Org members. There might be one or two in most orgs, but they don't have any real authority. They're there just to be kind of the eyes and ears of international management. Mm-hmm. And so you're in a position where in other words, because the Sea Org had so much attention on Tampa org, they're able to say something to you like not being willing to come in and hand out promo for 3 hours on your day off, refusing. Not even a day off, like morning off. Refusing to do that. You know, if you refuse to do that, they could maybe threaten you with declare.
Oh, and they would. They used to get me in so much trouble. Right. When I refused to sell books anymore.
Right.
It was after that I told Brittany. I said, "Brittany, I said, you need to find someone else to be at the University Mall tomorrow to man this kiosk, because I'm not going to be here. I'll be at the org." I said, "You can make me do whatever you want. I won't be here." And she can't argue with me. I literally at that point was like, "Fucking declare me."
Right.
I was a tough, but so anyway, they ended up making me clean bathrooms and wash their cars for about 2 months. And I was like, I'd rather do that than sell this fucking book to people.
Right.
And I just went around, vacuumed, and I mopped, and I was like,
well, there you go. At least you weren't being bothered.
I went from playing classical piano, kickboxing, playing soccer, and running Boy Scouts, getting my Eagle Scout, to having scholarships and all that, till I was a janitor, you know? Right. I was a fucking janitor who didn't want to lose his family. That's the evil part, right?
Wow.
And, yeah, man, it sucked.
Right.
But anyway, and then I ended up going to Ybor, and then I met a guy. And
what's in Ybor?
Ybor was a testing center, a life improvement center. It's where they do personality tests, IQ tests, and they sell books.
And how is, just explain very briefly, how that's different than the other place that you didn't want to keep going to?
Well, the other place, it
wasn't a test center? It was just a book kiosk?
Yeah, it was literally a kiosk.
Oh, like, it wasn't a building.
Yeah, it was like a kiosk that they sell cell phone covers at, like that kind of kiosk. Like,
okay.
It was in a mall.
So Ybor is a full-blown a building, a test center. It's built out. Okay, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this dude, he convinced me to, he actually offered me money to
A staff member?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's like, I'll give you 10 grand to come do this.
Seriously?
Yeah. Matt.
Okay. All right.
And
because it was his job and he wanted help doing it.
He wanted out, man.
Right.
And I was 18, and I was like, 10 grand, I'll do it. I was like, this job, fuck. I've been cleaning toilets.
So to clarify, we won't get into who Matt is right now, but this is a staff member who was rich. He's basically offering you 10 grand out of his own pocket to come help.
He hated his job
load
so much. No, not ease his load. Not ease his load.
Right, to cover for him.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he sold it to me. I think I would have done it without the money, because he sold it to me, because he said, you don't have to deal with all those idiots at the fucking org and have them ride your ass, because those guys are weird. When you're at the org, they just look for problems. I remember this guy named Dane Fiore just came up to me and was like, hey, Nick, are you masturbating?
You're like, do you mean right now?
No, I'm like,
do you mean 10 minutes ago?
I'm like, no, I got a few minutes left. I was like, I'm not due for like another 10 or so. But no, and I said, why? He goes, well, just answer. Are you masturbating? I go, Dane, I got to be honest. I got a pretty good relationship with myself, and I'm not really ready to make that relationship public. He made me read all the...
What was he, the ethics officer?
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot.
He's been a Scientologist for like a year and a half.
Okay.
But he was like a black belt, so he took all that energy and put it into the jerk-off police.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so you go to Ybor.
No, and so anyway, I'm just giving you an example. I hated being at the org. Like, they were so fucking weird.
Right,
and then the weekly staff meetings, it like felt like AA meetings. Like, people would stand up and go, today I helped someone with their headaches. And everyone would go, to LRH. And then I would sit there like, what the fuck did I give up my life for this? And so he sells me on the fact that you can get away from all those people. And I go, you know what? Sold. And I called Brittany Arnold and I said, put me in Ybor. She goes, you think I can just put you in Ybor? I go, yeah. I was like, you need people there. I go, you don't need people to keep fucking vacuuming your floors. You're just doing that to break my spirits. Mission accomplished. Little they know, I'm like Seabiscuit. They thought they were winning, but then I came back with a motherfucking vengeance. Going Clear came out. The rest is history. I'm awesome.
All right, so she puts you in Ybor.
Yeah.
And how long have you been on staff at this point?
5 months.
Oh, just a short amount of time.
About 6 months.
Okay, so you go to Ybor. What was it better than the kiosk? Does it go south? What happens?
It was better because there was like hot chicks. I didn't have to look like I was in a cult all the time. Like,
right.
I didn't have to. I could wear jeans and like a polo or a t-shirt. Like, I could hide from my my bosses, my seniors, and I could hang out in the shops. Like, I started making friends with people, the tattoo artists and the like hookah bar owners, the club owners and stuff. Matt knew a lot of people. So I got, I was like, this is okay. I could kind of get into this. Matt was teaching me a lot about business and, teaching me a lot about people and how to sell. He was a really, really amazing salesperson. He obviously got my dumb ass to come do this miserable job with him.
Did he pay you?
No.
Okay, and
I ended up. I ended up realizing he wasn't going to pay me, so I got him to teach me a lot about sales and business. So he ended up hooking me up with a lot of work, though. He ended up getting me out of the church eventually. So
right.
I think it came full circle.
True. So how long does that go on for before it goes south, and how long before you leave staff? Or
well, so now the next 2 years are just. They're miserable. I'm a great body router, though, right? I'm a recruiter. I bring in about 4,000 people.
So body routing is literally taking someone off the street, having a short conversation with them, and walking them into the org.
Yeah. Okay. And then I got about 4,000 people to come in. So
you're walking them into the test center in Ybor, or you're actually putting them in a van and taking them to the org?
No. Walking them to the test center.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a couple blocks.
Okay.
And so I was really good at it. And I'd sell them books sometimes.
And so how many? What were the numbers that you said?
About 4,000 people in.
Over what period of time?
Well, the amount of time I body routed was probably like a year and a few months, right? Okay. Because I threatened to leave Scientology probably 6 times while I was on staff. And every time because I hate it.
I mean, leave staff or leave Scientology?
Well, first leave staff, but see, we'd always do this rundown. You can't just leave staff. If you leave staff, you get declared a suppressive person. And Lynn Irons, the couple times I tried, like the 4 times I tried to leave staff, would always have these conversations with me and go,
right,
we'll take away your friends and family. And I would go, I'm going to go back to post. I'm going to do my thing. Lynn, you're a good motivational speaker. Thank you for reminding me what I lose if I don't thoroughly love sucking your dick. So, like, that's pretty much how that went. And so eventually I was like, so trying to leave staff doesn't work. I'm going to leave Scientology. So I would call Ed Clark, who was actually one of the scout leaders in my Boy Scout troop. And he was now like the HAS, Hubbard Area Secretary, which is over the Justice Department. And so I called him and I said, I want to leave Scientology. And he goes, Nick, is this becoming of an Eagle Scout? And I was like, yep. Like, I remember that conversation vividly. I was like, yes, it is. He goes, are you keeping the Scout honor in mind? And I thought about it. Yes. I wanted out of there so bad. And he goes, okay, come see me. So he gives me this like 5-hour speech of why I should stay on staff.
So he's the leader of the Scientology Boy Scout troop.
Well, he was the assistant scoutmaster when I was in Scouts before I got my Eagle Scout, but then he stopped being in Scouts and he was on staff now.
Ah.
Yeah, he tried to talk me into staff, but then I found out, I saw on a computer when I was leaving staff that he was also trying to leave staff because he was on the list of people that needed to leave.
He was trying to convince you not to leave while he himself was in the process of leaving.
Yeah.
And if he could convince you to stay, that would make up the damage for his own leaving.
Yeah. See, Ed Clark.
Funny how that works.
You're not an Eagle Scout, so you don't know what integrity is.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so do you finish your contract? Do you finish the 2.5 years?
So I do, right? Like,
yeah.
I finished my contract after doing all this bullshit and all this craziness that happened on staff, and but there's one other really crazy thing that happened on staff that really opened my eyes. I mean, they treat you like terribly. They talk down to you. It's fuck you, you out ethics, off the rail piece of shit. If they don't like the way you're dressed, if I dressed like this, it was like, it didn't matter if I brought in 100 people that day, when the next closest person that could body route to me could bring in maybe 4 people. In fact, Chris Kajeltson and Lauren Wagner and this guy named Nolan Wright all took over after me, and I think their combined total body routed over the next 3 years that they were on staff was like 200 people. 3 people, you know, and that was like me in a good 2 weeks for me. What
right.
They did in like 3 years, I did in 2 weeks.
Right.
But it didn't matter how much I produced. They hated me. They wanted they're such a vitriolic, hateful, spiteful group, and you feel like a terrible person. I mean, they would make me work extra on my birthday, you know, to discuss book wrapping.
Right.
Like, when they knew very well that I had specifically requested just to be able to get off on time, not to get off early. Please let me off on time on this night,
right,
so I can please go see my girlfriend. She's making me dinner. Like, and they would curse me out and keep me there and threaten to take away my fucking family if I didn't. You finish your contract. You finish your 2.5-year contract. Right.
And I assume by that time you've already decided you want to leave.
Yeah. So
staff. I mean, we're talking about leaving staff because I think some people also get confused about leaving staff and leaving Scientology. Mm-hmm. For you, whenever you wanted to leave staff, they would threaten to kick you out of Scientology. So it was always kind of one and the same.
Well,
right?
Basically, if I wanted to leave staff, they made it real difficult. There was a standard way to leave staff. You had to get a sec check, which is a security check, which is basically you give them all your transgressions. It's mandatory to get off all transgressions before you can leave staff.
So anything you've done bad.
Anything you've done bad. So you've basically volunteered for them for, on average, $18 a week for the last 2.5 years. And then you have to tell them everything you've done bad to them, right, so that you leave clean.
And that's not if you're in trouble. That's standard operating procedure.
That's standard. Once you finish your contract,
right,
or even if you want to, and the reason I couldn't leave staff before, even when I demanded to leave staff, is because they had to have an auditor to give me that sec check. But see, they only had one auditor. And guess who it audited? Was people who paid. Was public. Someone who wanted to leave staff, get in line, like the back of the line that we're going to pretend exists, but we're never going to audit you. So I remember I tried to leave staff the whole time I was on staff. And Lynn Irons, that dumb piece of shit, would at every staff meeting, he'd give this like he'd intimate about it. Like, he would be like, he's like, LRH says there's a wide open door and a wide back door. If you don't want to be here, we don't want you here. And I'd be sitting there like, I don't want to be here. Like in my head, like, let me go.
Right.
But it's, he just gave this pompous ass narcissistic speech every week. But our stats sucked. That org did nothing, And so at the end, when I really want to leave, Ed Clark giving me his speech, like, Eagle Scout, and you should stay, and we really need you. And then I go, dude, I am leaving. I do not care what you're saying here. Per LRH, I'm allowed to leave now because I did my 2.5 years. I'm out, yo. Let me go. Well, you can't go until you finish the standard leaving staff routing form. I go, start it. Let's start putting signatures on shit. I'm out, dude. So I go up to qualifications division, right, where they handle this kind of stuff. I go up to the 5th floor, 4th or something. And Sean Hunt's there. He was the something qual blah blah. And he leaves his desk, and on his computer it goes, staff for leaving staff sec checks. Ed Clark's name is first on the list. And I'm like, that piece of shit is leaving staff, and just tried to talk me into being, I was like, I'm in the twilight zone, right? And then so
this is still the period where you've officially finished your contract.
Oh, I'm done.
Right. You're not supposed to have to say, I want to leave. You're supposed to be able to just say, good, I've done my contracted service.
Yeah. And so
I'm going to go back to being a normal public now.
I'm trying, right? And
right.
then so I'm getting told by Ricky Garcia, Mark Valeriel, Ed Clark, Alex Boshoff, Matt Anderson, who is the main guy, Lynn Irons. They're all telling me I got to standardly do the leaving staff sec check. Well, right. I can't stop being on post until then. Oh, and then they tell me that I have to recruit a replacement.
Right.
I have to go recruit someone to be a body router.
And so what's the leverage that they have over you? These are the things we're saying that you need to do in order to standardly leave staff. And the or else is, and you need to do this or else because you'll be declared?
If I leave staff non-standardly we'd be not getting that sec check and not recruiting a replacement, I'll get declared.
Right.
And then I'll lose my family and friends. And Lynn Irons is like telling me this late at night, regularly. Like he's like, Nick, you know what happens when you get declared, don't you, Nick? And I was like, yep. Right. He's like, good. So why don't you do it standardly?
In any normal organization, whether it's a church or whether it's a company, the organization itself bears the responsibility of replacing people who are either moving on to other opportunities or who leave for whatever reason. Like, it's the organization's responsibility. Yeah, and there's kind of a recurring theme of it. It seems to me that Scientology cannot seem to help but make its own enemies by picking fights that no one has any business picking. Like, after 2.5 years of service, they could just say, thank you, Nick. We know that most Scientologists don't step up to the plate and join staff. Thank you for 2.5 years of service.
No.
You can go back and be Joe Public and do your communications courses.
Oh, it's so much worse than even that.
Instead, it's you have to basically undergo dozens of hours of forced confessionals and recruit a replacement.
Yep.
And until all that, and we don't have an auditor to do your confessional, so you're going to have to wait for that. And until that's done, you have to keep working.
Right.
And if you don't, you'll be declared.
Right. And so and it's even worse than that, what they did.
Right.
And so I'm going through all this, and I'm like, I don't have to recruit a replacement, but they show me this routing form written by LRH, and it goes, you have to have a replacement for your post. I go, doesn't say I have to recruit one. And I said, guys, I'm going to level with you. I wouldn't recruit my worst enemy to do what I just had to go through. This is miserable. I got paid like shit. I got treated like shit. I was insulted. I was taken away from my family. I haven't been able to see my grandmothers the whole time I've been on staff. You've taken away my life. Why would I ever lie to someone and tell them to do this? I go, declare me if you want over that statement, but I can't keep a straight face and do this. No one's going to join.
Right.
No one. And so anyway, then I'm waiting. It's been like 2-3 months, right? And I'm still going body routing and stuff, and I hate it. And I'm still getting threatened by Lynn Irons, saying if I don't do it standardly, I'm going to get declared. And so I'm beaten down. At this point, I'll do anything to leave, right? They say, well, you can pay for it. You can pay for your intensives, which are 12.5-hour auditing.
Because the only available auditor is too busy auditing paid public.
The one available.
So if you pay...
I can pay a daytime auditor, But since I'm staff member, I get 50% off on the Scientology donation services. So instead of $4,000 per intensive, it only costs me $2,000 intensive.
So an intensive is 12 and a half hours of auditing.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then they need me to buy 3 intensives. That's $6,000. I'm 20 years old.
For the privilege of leaving staff.
For the privilege of leaving staff. So at this point, I fight them for like a month.
And this isn't even the Sea Org. Like,
and
Lynn Irons,
Lynn Irons is after me every night with Dane Fiore and these other guys, and they're trying to get me. They're literally trying to grab my credit card out of my pocket, like every day, and trying to make up all these games of how to get my credit card. And I'm like, guys, I don't have money, man. Like, fucking 20. I didn't go to college. I'm here. I mean, I had a job. I was making like 35 grand a year, but that was enough to be broke, you know, not enough to blow 6 grand on leaving like slavery. Anyway,
and in the meantime, you're continuing to volunteer for them.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, essentially.
Volunteer contract.
Yeah.
Right. So how does this conclude? Do you ever successfully leave staff before you get declared? Like.
Yeah. So basically, I pay them 6 grand. I want to go to Buenos Aires, and I want to go experience life with my friend, right, who I'd been working. We had a little legal loans business together. And so I give them 6 grand. We get through. And really, that 37 and a half hours was spent with me going, why am I paying you for this? Like, I was getting off transgressions of I came in late or something, or I fell asleep on one of the night watches where they would they sprung this on me from 10 to 4 a.m. once a week. I would have to stay overnight.
Just to make sure no one breaks in.
Yeah, because they're too cheap to hire security, so they hire anyone 18 and older males would have to stay at the org from 10 a.m. to 4 a.m. or show up at 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. to watch the org.
Right.
And it was gross, right? So I had a full-time job and I had to post at night, and I would do this for them once a week.
Which is funny because that's normally a Sea Org thing, that because Tampa is so close to Flag, it's sort of pushed on them that they have to do it as well.
Well, it's gross, man. It literally leaves you delirious. Like, you're in this state of constantly trying to catch up on sleep. I fell asleep twice while driving in that time. But
okay, so you paid 6 grand,
and then we get through it, and it's not over, right? And they go, you need to give more money. And I said, I'm going to Buenos Aires. And so I go to Buenos Aires. I get back, and
so when you say we get through it, you have finished all of the hours that you bought.
Yeah.
But you're not done with your confessional.
No, they need me to buy like 2 or 3 more intensives.
Right.
Because at that point, all I was talking about, they were finding out about times I jerked off. Like, I was paying them to tell them about times I fucking yanked my chain. Literally, all of my Scientology auditing was about me jerking off. So if you look in my folders, it's just like what I jerked off to and what point, like how long I jerked off and to what porn, and if I used a tube sock or a napkin. Like, I kid you not. Like, it's funny, but that's what me and most of my friends did. And then some people went fucking clear and were still just as well off as every other human on the planet. But so I get back from Buenos Aires, and then after like a month, people are like, are you still on staff? And I can't tell them no, because Lynn Irons was like, if you tell people you're not on staff, we'll declare you. So I just said, yeah, I'm on staff. They're like, well, why aren't you going in? I'm like, I'm not going in. So I just finally called Ricky Garcia and Mark Valerio, and I said, dudes, I'm done. Do whatever you want. I said, I'm not paying you any more money to do it. I'm done. And he said, okay.
Right.
And that's literally how easily they rolled over once I finally just said I'm done.
Well, right.
That will show you how real Scientology is that when you really tell them to fuck off, they actually do.
Right.
Because they have nothing to really hold over you other than fear. But no, it's like I had a really bitter taste in my mouth from staff. There was 3 guys or 2 guys. There was 2 guys on staff that had fucked minors, and they just got kicked off staff and told to do conditions, and I didn't appreciate that. There was a girl named Jackie Rodriguez. She was 14 at the time, and while they were opening up the St. Pete Test Center, right, the one that John Travolta spoke at and said, I'm really happy to let y'all have this great technology too, right? And like did his little fucking speech. Well, we worked on that every night for months, right? And I was getting transferred to that one because I was tired of working in Ybor with all the schmoes and schmucks and crackheads. Not that the St. Pete one was any better. They were right next door to a cigar shop, a crack hotel, and across the street from every homeless person in St. Pete. But it was like 2 a.m. one night on like a Wednesday, and this girl Jackie, she was on the 2nd floor, and there was a wall beat off. Real pretty, real cute girl, but she looked up to me. We were good friends. I always looked out for her. And I was 19 at the time, I think, the year before I finished my staff contract, and she fell through the second story ceiling and fell down and badly injured herself.
This is while it was under renovation?
Yeah. And but they couldn't call the cops, and they couldn't take her to a hospital because she was a 14-year-old. They were breaking child labor laws, and she wasn't a licensed construction worker. She was just there, right? So.
And did they have insurance? I mean, do you have any idea?
I don't have an idea.
Okay.
No, probably not. John Westland was the estates manager. He was overseeing it, and then there was I think like a CMO. I think Brittany Arnold was there. There were some CMO people there overseeing it, but she fell through it, and I was somewhere down on the first floor or something. I didn't hear, but someone came and got me and said Jackie just fell through the roof, and I was like worried because that was my it was my friend, and so they can't take her to a hospital. They can't call anyone.
What was wrong with her? Did she break anything?
No, she was badly bruised.
At this point, no one knows what's wrong with her.
No one knows what's wrong with her.
But they
she
can't call an ambulance.
She can't move. She can't move, right? She's there. She's laid out. And she was a pretty girl. She was like 5'3" or 4" maybe. What I'm trying to say is she wasn't athletic. That fall hurt, right? And so they called Jerry Jarrett's office. I know the guy Rick who owned the Family Life place, but I don't think Rick knew about this. But they called Jerry Jarrett, who was on staff
this is
at
Family
Temple.
Life Chiropractic?
Yeah, in downtown Clearwater on Garden Street.
Right.
And Jerry Jarrett was the chiropractor there, and Jerry Jarrett was on staff at Tampa Org.
Okay.
So they got Jerry Jarrett to open up the clinic. And this was about 35 minutes away from St. Pete.
The chiropractic clinic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So this is about 35 minutes from St. Pete to Clearwater. Say, Nick, can you take her to Jerry Jarrett? He's going to be waiting for her. I said, of course. So I deadlift her off the ground, put her in my my car, and I drive her to Clearwater, carry her, deadlift her out of the car, carry her in there, and we go into the waiting room, and Jerry starts to check on her, but then he gets a call, and then he goes, okay, you guys got to go. I got to come with me. So I got to he speeds me with this 14-year-old girl into a back room, and then he goes, just wait here, and he closed the blinds, and he goes, don't look. He walks out. I go, what is so important at 2 a.m.? I hate my life at this point. I'm just used to it, right? I just resigned myself to slavery. But I peek out, and John Travolta's out there with 2 Sea Org members who, no celebrity goes anywhere without their president office handlers, right? And I recognized one of the ladies because she used to kiss my ass when I was best friends with Tom Cruise's niece, Jamie Lesavoy. When he kicked Jamie out of the family, she became best friends with me for a couple years, and so the church, the president's office, was always trying to get me to take care of Jamie, So I recognized the chick and some other chick that were there with John Travolta, and so Jerry left this 14-year-old busted up girl who had just been working for 18 hours all day, basically as a victim of breaking child labor laws, to go give John Travolta an adjustment. And I was like, at that point I was looking, and I said, I don't care who he is, man. This is a little girl. I get if it's me, I'm a guy, right? Guys can take this shit. This is a 14-year-old little girl. And John Travolta gets his fucking neck adjusted because he wants it,
At 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. And so we sat back there for 20 minutes while she was just whimpering, She had shortness of breath, she had bruised some ribs. I think she cracked a couple ribs. It was shameful to me. But this was the last 8 months of my contract, and I was just trying to concentrate on my breathing until I could get out of there,
Right.
But I was furious. I thought it was so wrong. And she was just, and the sad part is when Jackie looked out and saw it was John Travolta, she lit up and was like, oh, that makes sense. It's like Stockholm Syndrome.
Right.
People are willing to be nothing.
No, I mean, the celebrity, I think the world at large knows that there's a big celebrity worship aspect in Scientology, but, from the viewpoint of let's say a public Scientologist who's active in the church.
Yeah.
The reason they hold these celebrities up on such a high pedestal is because they think that those celebrities, simply by virtue of being a Scientologist, are helping to safe point or to create a good impression for Scientology throughout the entire world. So by simply being John Travolta, by him just being himself, he is helping make a safe world for Scientology. You know, it's like they're disseminating even when they're not disseminating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. So everyone reveres them as gods, right? And same with Tom Cruise. So anyway, those are just a few highlights. I mean, I could tell you every day on staff was a new headache, right?
Right.
But anyway, I get off staff, right, and I'm done. And then the next headache starts of leaving.
Okay, so you're officially off staff. At least you've informed them of that fact. They've accepted it. They've decided to stop bothering you. At what point does the stuff that it has been touched on in Going Clear start happening? And so just to quickly summarize it, my understanding, just correct me if I'm wrong, right?
Sure.
Okay, so your friend Matt, let's just say, we won't tell his story, but let's say he starts distancing himself from Scientology pretty fast, pretty heavily, pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And you essentially, he's your friend. You essentially, you're pressured, to disconnect from Matt. And you're like, nah, no thanks.
Well, that's what happened. So Matt gets treated like scum. Okay, so he got treated like scum too.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people get treated like scum. Some people you either become a dictator in there, you become a slave driver, you become a good slave, or you become like me and Matt. We don't want to be either. We want out. And Matt got treated like just shit. Not going into his story. It's just as pathetic and painful as, all of us had to endure. Like, why were they that cruel? They want me to disconnect from them. I'm like, that just doesn't feel right, And
they want you to disconnect from him because of other shit we're not going to get into, but they're not happy with stuff he's doing.
Yeah.
He's providing assistance to other people who are speaking out against the church.
Yeah, but more so than that, he was linking up with them to find knowledge, right?
He wanted to find out from some of these big guys who'd left what really went down, why did they really
He was doing his research like any normal person would do his research.
Right.
And I personally was intrigued because I, at this point, had such a bad experience with the church that I was like not against what he was doing. And so that's when the church had their runaround with me. Then it started.
So the church, I'm sorry to keep jumping in. No. The church finds out that Matt is out there talking to people who have left, senior Sea Org members who have left. They find out he's out there talking to them to get the truth of why they left. How they found that out is probably because they had PIs following those people that he was visiting.
Well, they had PIs on every one of us.
Right. But they probably didn't have PIs on Matt until he started going to visit those people.
No.
Because Matt was just a Div 6 staff member in Tampa Org. That's in the general scheme of Scientology a nobody. Okay. So, and then the church finds out he's basically up to no good, which is what we just described.
Yeah.
And that is why they're saying, ooh, this guy's,
they
you need to
him.
disconnect from Matt.
Yeah.
You say no, and then the pressure starts to ratchet up?
Well, at first, I go, that's fine, right? Because I wasn't off staff yet. He got declared while I was still trying to get off staff. So they coincide with each other. So I'm like, that's fine. I was doing anything to get off staff. I wasn't going to rattle any more cages.
Right.
I had already been a janitor 10 times. I was a janitor like for 8 of those months, basically.
Right.
Stuff. Like I couldn't take any more abuse. I was at my wit's end.
Yeah.
I was having suicidal thoughts at that point. I was like, I can't take the abuse anymore. And so I hook back up with Matt, so to speak. All right. After I leave staff, I notice all my friends and family members of mine going, are you going to go on course? Are you going to get auditing and all that? It's like, it's because it's within the DNA of Scientologists to need to get you to do Scientology. And I said, I'm just relaxing right now. Like I've done nothing but Scientology my whole life. I'm just taking like a few month break, Just on staff for 3 years. Let me go to the beach. Let me go pursue a genuine relationship with a girl. Let me go pursue a real career. And these are the things I was earnestly asking for. But no one could get the whole course in auditing out of their mind. No, go do that. And I go, what's your problem? Like, let me alone. Well, they took that as a sign that I was disaffected or something. So then I start getting like, the best I can describe is interventions. People start calling me, my friends, every time I see them to go make music. I was making like, music with a few of my close friends back then. I was I couldn't go anywhere without someone talking to me about, what's going on with you. Nothing. I just turned 21. I just got back from Buenos Aires, and I wasn't even partying that much. But then after a few months, I couldn't take the pressure anymore. They were starting to yell at me, people I knew. And I was like, what is wrong with you people? Relax. And so I called Matt, and I said, dude, what the fuck? Is everyone crazy? I think that's exactly what I said. He goes, basically. And I went over to his house, and I hooked up with the rest of the people, the people had left, and Marty and a guy named Chris, and started getting the real data. And I went online. There wasn't much online, but I watched the Jason McGay video, and I thought, that makes sense. My friend at the time...
Because you knew of Jason McGay.
We live in a world gone mad.
Right.
Yeah, I knew who he was.
Other than being the voiceover for the Sea Org slideshow, did you have any other knowledge of Jason?
Yeah, I knew him in G.I. Jane, man. Demi Moore was my first real relationship, at least as far as...
But I mean, in a Scientology context, did you... The reason I ask is because, like, for example, the courses that I did, there was all these training films that Scientology has produced. Jason's in, like, over half of them. So for me,
I knew who he was.
Jason was kind of like the Tom Cruise for a lot of young Scientology kids that grew up on staff because he's in all the Scientology movies.
Sure, and I knew of him just like I knew about Larry Anderson in the orientation film who ended up leaving, and Michael Fairman who was in a bunch of films like the Testing Center film, which he ended up leaving. And so I watched that and I was like, that makes sense. Some of the stuff like about Zeno and stuff, I wasn't interested in that because the truth was I already hated the church. Like, I hadn't had a good run with them my whole life. I mean, you're talking about from trying to abort me, to trying to recruit me, to intimidating me, to telling me my girlfriend was a whore and to go have her fucking babies, to taking away all my friends for no reason, to spreading around to everyone that I had a suicidal thought, to leveraging my family against me to make me pass out promo and work for them for 60 hours a week for $18 a week for almost 3 years. Like, I was livid. But I still thought Scientology worked and stuff. And, and to be honest, to this day, I don't care if someone uses it. It's fine. It's like, but, yeah.
So you hooked up with Matt. You started talking to some of the guys that Matt was talking to. I guess at this point, the pressure must have started to ratchet up quickly. But the pressure at this point, correct me if I'm wrong here, is more now being brought to bear on your mom. Because not necessarily... So help me understand this. When does it shift from them giving you a hard time to they sort of go...
Okay, so check it out. Here's how the church gets its power, right? If you won't do what they say, they find someone that means the world to you that will get you to do what they say. So they start taking away my friends, right? My dad disconnects from me. I was like,
But why did he disconnect from you if you're not declared yet?
Because he's hardcore. I don't know, because he's all about the mission.
But you're not declared yet.
No.
Okay, he just feels like you're too dangerous.
Yeah, well, actually, this my dad didn't do. Okay, so I'm moving ahead too far. So in the beginning here, what happened was when they start putting pressure on my mom was because I wouldn't change. I wouldn't go in the org. I didn't want to do, work with them. But my mom was worried, so she got me to agree to work with them. It took like a year and a half, but she got me to agree. And I did, and I regretted it, right? So I went in there, adult, with this bitch named Kathy True, who's like a mix between Quasimodo and the spawn of Satan, with tits, I think. But she's an evil person. Hi, Kathy. I go in there after a year and a half because I got nothing at this point. I had just, God, there's a lot of details to this. It's back to back, right? So, get off staff, a few months go by, everyone goes crazy on me. I contact Matt. I keep that quiet for about 6 months. In this time, a lot of people are having questions about what I'm doing. I'm working for Matt. Church doesn't know. A lot of my friends don't like the church, but they're very quiet about it to keep their families. I'm trying to stay quiet, but I also kind of don't care. I pick up drinking pretty heavily because I'm really upset about what's just happened with my life, right? I just got over 3 years of pretty heavy abuse, not to mention my childhood. It was kind of shitty with that church. And so I'm drinking a lot at 21. I think it's pretty common. And then the church finds out about Matt. And then my family freaks out. My friends freak out. And they all bring down the power of Thor on me. And I go into the church and they do a 2-night, 4-hour-a-night tribunal. They have 4 people. They sit there with recordings. They've got reports written from my friends. My buddies Nico Reefer and Tyler Davis wrote 30-page KRs on me. I mean, screenshots of my text messages, everything about every girl I ever had sexual relationships with that they knew about.
So just generally reporting on what they perceive to be bad behavior, or stuff specific to Matt? Or just anything they can dig up that was bad?
Anything they could think of that they thought was unbecoming of a Scientologist to me. And then I had screenshots of text messages from friends that were given to the church. I had screenshots of my Facebook pages, printouts of photos. They had my financial records. Then they had my folders. They had everything on me. I was amazed. It was like seeing that everyone I ever knew had betrayed me overnight. And
so was this a COMEV?
Yeah.
So a committee of evidence. So the a court martial. It's the Scientology equivalent of a court martial.
Scientology equivalent of court martial. It's a very biased group. So, and they brought up stuff like this one time. I posted this lyric from Hollywood Undead. It was called "It's hard to choose between religion and being a gangster." And I was drunk and on blow a lot. Like, I don't know. It sounded like a good lyric. But they accused me of publicly disavowing Scientology because I posted that lyric. And so they go, "What is this?" And they look at me with this dead stare. And I'm like, "It's a lyric?" I'm like, "What does it mean?" And it means that one finds it difficult to adjudicate whether one should be pious or thuggish. They're like, "Do you find that funny?" I was like, "Not anymore." So I was like...
It was funny at the time.
I was like, it was funny before y'all looked at me like that. Now I just want to fucking crawl into a fetal position and cry myself to sleep. But I'm going to keep a straight face. So that was like 4 hours of that night and 4 hours the next night. And I watched my world fall apart. I'd been watching my world fall apart, but now I watched everyone throw me under the bus. I didn't have any friends. So I'd done blow maybe twice before that. I started doing about that night. They told me I had to quit working for Matt, told me I couldn't hang out with any of these people anymore, or they were going to take away my family. And I believed them. Because my family said that. And all my friends had said that. So
basically, they're saying, we're going to declare you. Your family at that point is sitting there saying,
please handle this.
Because if they declare you, we will disconnect from you.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't want it. They're not saying that. It's true, though.
They're basically saying, please don't make us do this.
Yeah. Ashley had said, if you get declared, I'm probably not going to stay connected to you. And I said, so starting the next night, I was doing an 8-ball 5 times a week for the next 2 months. Yeah, I had a coke habit for like 2 months, but I was doing like 5 8-balls a week, right? And I was making a lot of money right at that point. And just did that for like 2 months. I just numbed, right? I was high on Christmas Day. Matt cooked filet mignon, Matt Epstein. I couldn't taste it, coke. But I was really bad off. I wanted to die. There's no getting around that. I wanted to die.
So over this 2-month period, you've had your COMEV. Mm-hmm. Have the results come back? Or the findings come back?
The findings did not come back. So this happens in like beginning of November. I turned 21. I turned 22 that November, and then I do blow throughout December, and then I do blow the final time in the beginning of January of like 2010. The Truth Rundown had come out in 2009. All this stuff had happened, but I had just been put through the ringer on the church. I have no money left. I go tell my mom I'm addicted to coke, and she calls Narcanon. She knew some people. She gets me a place in there. I thought this is a vacation compared to what I've been going through, because I can't hide from this church anymore. They've got this guy named Dave LeBeau was chasing me at this point.
Dave LeBeau, the PI?
Looks like a little mousy guy. Yeah. He's the one that orchestrated the whole Monique Rathbun thing. He's the one that got...
Right, so what's he chasing you for? Because you're hanging out with Matt?
Yeah, he wants to get to Matt and Chris Colt. Yeah, he wants to get to people. And I slammed the door in his face a couple times. I just told him, I said, why do you think I want to talk to you, dude? Like, you're delusional. But, so I thought, shit, rehab is like a break from what I've been going through. And it was. I get up there, they give me the spiel. Don't talk about Scientology. I said, no problem. I hate the subject. But somehow, through the rumor mill, everyone finds out about me in Narconon, right? So
they find out, they're being pretend Scientologists in their rehab. They find out you're a real Scientologist. And who cares? Why does anyone want you to talk about Scientology?
People have questions about Tom Cruise and Xenu and OT and what it's like.
So they just don't want
kind of like the questions we're talking about here.
Right.
And I'm just, I don't know, I won't talk. Anyway, eventually after 6 weeks of being in rehab, I got you got nothing to do but talk. You can't party, you can't be with a chick, you got a curfew, you just talk to your friends and play cards. So I told them some things, and then I told them a little bit about OT and stuff. Anyway, it gets back to the higher ups after like 2.5 months, and I'd finished the purification run down there, and they wanted me to do TRs, but I had already gotten all the soups in trouble because I knew more about them than they did and whatnot. But they kicked me out of Narconon. And at that point, I was like, good, I'm done. But in that time, I get a call from Kara, the FLB Justice Chief, and she sets it up with this guy named Mike McGee, who's like one of the Scientology staff members there.
At the Narconon.
Yeah, and so they break HIPAA law basically getting a hold of me there, but that's the church for you, right? Also, Narconon had my folders from the church. I mean,
Narconon had your church PC folders. And so the church, when you say they broke HIPAA law, so to break HIPAA law, Narconon would have to disclose patient identifying information or whatever to the church. But if the church contacted your mom and she said he's at Narconon and they contacted Narconon, like I just want to clarify the break the HIPAA law. Did Narconon break HIPAA law, or are you saying that because the
Narconon wasn't at liberty to say anything about my whereabouts or if I was available.
Even to confirm if you were there or to... Yeah. Okay, I get what you're saying.
Unless I had specifically put them on the list to be spoken to, and I did not. I put my mother on, but for Kara to call personally and set up a call with Mike McGee.
So a SEERG member from Flag calls Narconon, liaises with the a Scientologist staff member at the Narconon to talk to you, gets you on the phone.
Yeah.
All right, what happens?
And then she had sent a picture to Mike McGee. It was a picture of me out with friends at a bar, and a guy named Chris was in it who had been a declared SP, who had used to be in SEMO, and she wanted to ask when the picture was taken.
So she's trying to bust you for hanging out with someone that was declared.
Here I am fighting for my life to get off of cocaine and alcohol and
at a Scientology rehab facility.
And the only reason she calls is to make sure I'm not associating with someone they don't like.
Right.
It wasn't to check on me. And so I said, that's not me. She goes, how can you prove it? I go, because that phone is a BlackBerry and I haven't had a BlackBerry in 2 years. And she goes, good point.
So it wasn't you.
I was holding a phone, it was a BlackBerry.
But it was you.
It was me,
right?
But it was in the past, and I was trying to keep the church away from it. And so, whatever. I ended up getting kicked out of Narconon eventually because I'm talking shit about Scientology, but not really. I just told my roommates a few things and said, please don't tell everyone, and they did.
Right.
But that's crackheads for you.
That's kind of how it works.
Can't trust those drug addicts.
I'm going to jump in with one question.
Yeah.
To the best of your knowledge, were any of the staff members who were working at the Narconon doing any drugs while you were there?
About 75% of them.
Of the staff members who themselves had previously graduated the Narconon program, were engaging in drugs with the students?
Some of them, yeah.
Okay, but that was not hard for you to find out or to observe?
No, it was everywhere.
Okay.
No, I mean, I'm still friends with quite a few of those staff members that were on there. I mean, I know a lot of the students that were in my program.
And are we talking weed or something harder?
Liquor, Dilaudid.
What is that? Is that a pill?
Yeah.
Okay.
Steroids, weed.
Okay. Cocaine?
Heroin.
Heroin? Okay.
Coke, it wasn't the predominant one, but...
Okay. I'm just checking because I have a knowledge of another Narconon facility that the staff members were constantly getting in trouble for doing drugs.
It wasn't hard to get drugs
with the students.
Yeah.
I can understand students who are trying to rehab sneaking drugs.
No, I mean,
it's a little harder to understand the staff members doing drugs with the students. But
you get anything from staff members for money.
So
I was still making like $600 or $700 a week from my little. I was selling a few leads, like online leads each week. They would let me have my phone just because I had my FEI and tax ID number, so I was allowed to work in rehab.
Right.
So I'd take my phone for an hour a day and just make a few calls to push some leads and make some money. And so that was basically so I could have commissary, so I could have like a pool stick and a coffee press and get coffee every week and cigarettes, I got a carton or two of cigarettes a week. But
yeah, so I didn't want to divert your story. I just wanted to ask that question before I forgot.
Yeah, no, if you had money, you could get the staff members doing anything. My personal thing is I didn't want to do drugs. I mean, there was no joy in doing drugs in rehab. Like, there was no chicks. It was like boring as shit and you had a curfew. Why would I want to do coke and stay up all night with a bunch of dudes? But other people seem to want to, and I was like, yeah. So you
get kicked out.
I get kicked out, and then I come back to Clearwater, and then I'm staying like sober, but then the church tells me I've got to do 300 hours of amends. I've got to start at doubt as a Scientologist in conditions. I've got to do a full sec check, and then I've got to like write a big apology to the world for.
I got it. So that's the committee of evidence handed down this list of things for you to do to make amends.
Mm-hmm. I tell them to kick rocks. I say, you guys are full of. I literally just got off of 3 years of slavery, and you're gonna level this at me for what? Like not liking the way you treated me?
Talking to the wrong people.
Yeah, but after you treated me like such shit. So for a year and a half, I start making really good money, right? I never go back. To this day, I've never really gone back to coke. Tried it a couple more times, and I lost my love affair with it, right? Alcohol, I haven't even drank in like the last 8 months. I'm happy now in life, But then I just was trying to escape. When you lose all your friends, your family, you don't know what to believe in anymore, and your whole life was a lie, and you end up feeling like a slave. You numb to some degree. And so I was going to Vegas, New York. I was going to Cali. I was going everywhere, right? And I was partying, and I was just trying to run away from the church, man. I was just trying to get away, but they kept coming at me, and so eventually they couldn't get me. They couldn't get me to come back in, but then they broke my mom. They got my mom really upset. They said, your son's going to get declared, and you're going to lose your son. And the waterworks. They get my mom to cry. I love my mom more than anything in the world, right? And I could not stand what they were doing to her. So I pled with her, please don't do this. Don't work with them. They're criminals. She was still in the mindset that they're good people. She refused to Google shit. So I put up a front for a year and a half, but eventually I just get broken down. I can't keep up the ruse. And so I go in there, and it's Tommy Davis. It's Tommy Davis, Mike Sutter, Karen Powell, Kathy True. They all got me in there. Tommy Davis, I walk in there, and he tells me.
So this is Clearwater, because most people who know Tommy Davis know him as a LA-based Sea Org member.
This is Clearwater. So
what year is this?
2011, maybe.
Okay.
2000. Right. This is 2011, and so basically it had started with me and my buddy Matt talking, and we're like, what if we strike a plea deal with the church? Like, we don't want to be the victims of these fuckers the rest of our life. I said I'd love to, because that would handle my problem with my mom, because I'm about to lose my mom, and because I was declared. It was only a matter of time before I was going to lose my mom at this point. My dad and sister were gone.
At this point, had you actually been declared?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Was I? Yeah. At this point, I got declared. So, I get, so basically after rehab, and then they give the orexin findings, and then I tell them to kick rocks. 3 months later, or like 5. So I get out of rehab in March of 2010. They declare me in September of 2010.
All right.
And then I remember I got declared, and I went to Joe Childs basically because I had a story from the stars for him, and he was dying to meet me. But then my mom talked me out of it, and I said fine. I said fuck Clearwater, and I got on a plane, and I was working for a company in Vegas, and I was making pretty good money every week, and I just went and medicated with alcohol, and I partied and had a lot of sex and did all the things that get you to not think about real life. And so I kind of keep that up for like a while. And then eventually that's when I talked to Matt about what if we strike a plea deal?
So you both declared.
Ashley and Gabby and Matt are all gone. Matt Epstein. My dad is long gone.
Right.
My friends are my friends aren't all gone. All my close friends, like Spencer Bradham, Aaron Dunham, these guys still talk to me, right? And they were just like, dude, the church is fucked, and we support you, but eventually the church got to them. And, I don't know, showed them something or other about how bad I was. But they kept coming back into my life, in fact, up until about 2 years ago. Then I just stopped taking their calls. But, so I go in there, and it's Tommy, and then Matt backs out. He doesn't want a deal anymore. He's like, you know what, I realize that they don't want to give a deal. They just want to destroy us. And I said, I know, but maybe there's some humanity there. This is my last effort. I walk in, and I would try to be real nice, and I said, Tommy, I'm really not trying to put I'm not trying to stir the pot here. And he goes, good, because I'll fucking squash you like a bug. And I looked at him like shaking, like, does anyone have a soul left in this place? Like, what are you trying to do to me? What are you? You know? So they tell me I have to do A to E, the steps A, B, C, D, E, right? To get undeclared and publicly recant, say I'm wrong, do all these amends.
Right. So A to E is the
throw everyone under the bus.
The policy that says what you have to do if you get declared to get undeclared, and it lists out these steps A through E. Yeah. So that's the term A to E.
Right. And so they tell me I got to do all these things, and so I go, fine. So, but we had a deal. Do all that plus these courses. Because it says you have to retrain at the bottom of the bridge. I said, fine, I'll do it. In my head, I was like, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to run the fuck away. So my family won't have to disconnect from me, and then I'll just move to California,
right,
change my last name, and recreate a life. Well, I do everything. I do all the amends. I repaint all the Narconon in Spring Hill and start an anti-drug website, pay a bunch of money, get a bunch of traffic to it, right? Raise some money for it. Got a bunch of anti-drug booklets in schools. I went and got their sec check, threw all the anti-Scientologists under the bus. I got selfish. I was like, you know what? I want my family back. I don't know who's right or wrong. I'd lost my mind. You know what I'm saying?
So when you say you threw the anti-Scientologists under the bus, basically the people, who are you throwing under the bus? People who are already declared, people who are in the church, but we're secretly
people who are already
to
declared.
So you basically spilled the beans because the church wants to know what all these guys are up to. So to the degree that you can, you spill the beans on what the people you've been spending time with have really been up to.
Yeah, but I held a lot of the important shit back. But I gave them enough. Like we were all into drugs, you know, at the time, or at some point we were. So I gave them enough to where
okay,
they
just bad behavior, reporting on bad behavior of the people the church wants to keep tabs on.
Yeah, I gave them half of the stuff, you know. I gave them enough to get through it.
And so then what happens?
And then I do the courses, and I say, "Now we're good, right?" Like I write Mike Ellis, the International Justice Chief, and I go, "I can get undeclared now, right? Like I want my family back. I miss my family." And he goes, "Nope, you have to do all the basic books and lectures, and then you can repetition." Well, let me tell you something. That was going to take like 3 years. Those aren't small, man. Right. That motherfucker talked forever. And that shit's not easy to understand, dude.
And so at this point, you're still living in Clearwater?
At this point, I was all over the place.
Okay.
But I had gone back to Clearwater to try to do this.
All right, so he tells you to do the basic books and lectures. What happens next?
And then I tell him to piss off. That was the last time I ever dealt with them. But what had happened in the interim when it was up to making up the damage, that step, I went to Minneapolis. I was trying to get away from the church in Minneapolis. And I got a call from Kathy True and Roger, who's the Invest Chief. She said, Nick, I was in Chicago at the time actually partying for Memorial Day weekend. She said, we need you to come down to Palm Harbor. I said, Like I just got to Chicago. What's in Palm Harbor? She goes, well, Mike Rinder is going to be in LA, or is in LA for 3 days. And we want you to come down and seduce Christy Colbrand and show her that you'd be a better option in a relationship than Mike Rinder. I said, what? What, Kathy? was outside of a bar, just looking at the bar. Like,
so this is Kathy. Kathy's like, I don't know, maybe a 60-year-old woman.
Like but looks like she's 90.
So she's asking you.
She looks like a 90-year-old man with gout.
To fly down to Clearwater while Mike is out of town, and basically get his wife to cheat on him. Essentially.
Oh, 100%.
Because it's not like she
essentially 100%. That's what she wanted.
Because she's not saying we think Christy should have a better man in her life. No. She's just trying to get you to get Mike's wife to cheat on him.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess at this point, I'd wonder, is that so they could ruin Christy's name or to embarrass Mike? But probably both.
To ruin both of them, or ruin Mike for sure.
And ruin the marriage.
They were still trying to get Christy to come back to her family. Her family was still trying to... And so, yeah, she...
so they offered to pay your flight down there so that you could go seduce someone's wife?
No, they're too cheap for that.
Well, they want you to pay it because you're making
We never even got to that point.
Okay.
We didn't get to the travel details.
Right.
This was the last conversation I ever had with Kathy True in my life.
Yeah.
I cussed her out that night. And this was the last time I would do anything with her. Was this conversation.
And
because after those courses, I got so pissed. I said, I'm done doing anything for the church.
Right.
And then I went up to Minneapolis, and she calls me, and I go, she goes, we want you to show, Christy that she can have a better man in her life. And I go, Kathy, what you want me to take Mike's girlfriend from him?
Were they married at this point? Do you know?
No, just dating. They'd been dating for like a year. And she goes, yeah. I go, what is wrong with you? And I just asked her honestly. I said, what is wrong with you, Kathy? She goes, what, Nick? I go, who are you? What do you work? What do you stand for? I go, that's not how life works. You don't just show up and take a guy's girl. That doesn't even work. Like, it's not just like, hey, this will work. Good. Always like, and then I said, fuck you. I said, fuck all of this. Fuck. And I started like getting, for my first time, I was like, fuck all of this. What the fuck am I doing? Fuck you. Fuck this. Fuck A to E. I'm fucking done.
Right.
Right. And she goes, you sound upset, Nick. I was like, do I? Good job. You fucking intelligent hunchback beast.
All the commentary that's going on right now about whether the church should have its tax-exempt status revoked. And none of that conversation really stems at all on whether the philosophy of Scientology is worthy of tax exemption or whether it's a real religion. It's really whether an organization that spends its money and its resources to harass and intimidate and investigate and how is that bringing improvement to society?
Well, my thing with that is this. You have to look at it practically, right? Knowledge should be free, right? And Voltaire has a quote, to find out who controls you, just look at who you can't criticize, right? If you can't criticize something, you could criticize the American government, actually, without reproach. Truthfully. I mean, unless you threaten to kill the fucking president. You can criticize anything about American politics, and no one does anything, you know? In Scientology, you say anything about David Miscavige, you say anything about L. Ron Hubbard, and your life is over. How is that right? How are you not allowed to have an opinion?
Right.
Another thing is just because people say it's true doesn't make it true, right? Like, just because they say OT exists doesn't mean OT exists. Just because they say they have 8 million members doesn't mean they have 8 million members. Right. When you're at events and you hear Guillaume Leserve go, we have reached 2 billion people with an LOH technology, and that is LOH. And you see everyone go ape shit crazy and go, do you think for a second that he could be making all of that shit up?
Yeah. Because I've told people, I joined staff when I was 12. I left the Sea Org when I was 26. And what did it have? 5 major international events per year where they basically get up on stage and tell you how Scientology's taken over the entire fucking world. Not once did I ever think something they were saying was exaggerated. I mean, I look back on it now and I almost don't even know how that's possible.
No.
Like, every staff member in every org in the world knows that their org is not bigger today than it was 15 years ago.
My thing is this. You know what caught my attention was probably when I was like 18, 19 going to these events. And I realized that in the last decade of events I'd attended, every year things had expanded 5 times, 10 times. Well, in the Tony Hitchman video, there were millions, right? Like, supposedly the Tony Hitchman interview with LRH, he said, LRH goes, oh, there's millions of members or something like that. Okay, great. So if you're saying that you 5, 10x like membership and stats since then, there should be fucking hundreds of million, even 8 million. You know, when I was 21, I got this postcard, and it said 100,000 basics had been sold. But they'd been out for 4 years. And I knew people like Herb Zerdin, who was my stepdad's best friend, who had bought fucking 20 packages.
Right.
And Grant Cardone probably bought 900. You know, it was like, I was like, if you have 8 million members, every Christian I know has a Bible. And then when I went in and talked to Matteo,
they give that shit out for free.
Yeah, I went in and talked to Matteo Rossetti about it, and he blew 2 weeks later. He left the Sea Org.
That's one of the ethics officers.
Yeah,
right?
but and then it's just, it doesn't add up. If it's not true, it's not true. You can't just say it's true or ignore it, right? If you can't see an OT. I'm not even going to ask you if you've seen an OT. OT doesn't exist, man. Not in the Church of Scientology. There's able, good, prosperous people.
Right.
There's no fucking OTs, man. There's no clears, dude. Like, there's blown out euphoric people, but I'm gonna be honest. There's a lot of OTs that are criminals and die of cancer and all that, and there's nothing past OT8, you know?
Right.
And so they believe in thin air at the end of the day. Not that this stuff doesn't work, but it's just like the analogy to getting my cousin to work out, you know? He can believe he can fly all he wants. He's not gonna fly. He might get some muscles, but it's not worth dedicating your family and your friends to, right? What belief needs your family and friends to believe? What anything needs your family and friends to believe in it to exist? Do I need to believe in your wife for you to have a happy relationship, Aaron? I mean, just answer that honestly.
No.
Does anyone in this hotel need to believe in your wife?
In order for what?
You to just have a relationship with her.
No, she can just be my imaginary wife.
There you go.
Okay, so now that like everything that we've covered so far, I think kind of takes us right up to the events where pretty much going clear sort of starts to cover,
Yeah.
right? And so we won't rehash all of that right now.
Yeah.
So where do you stand now on the subject of Scientology, the Church of Scientology, auditing, whatever?
On Scientology, it's a wealth of knowledge that has workable tenets in it, but the purpose of Scientology is a lie, and it's easily proven to be a lie. Why do people have to be hurt by information, whether it's good or bad?
When you say the purpose of Scientology is a lie, what do you mean by that?
OT, saving the planet, Target 2. What? Are psychiatrists, do they perpetrate some evils? They do. Are there a lot of problems on this planet? There really are. But if you really look at it, the Church of Scientology is not fixing any of them at all.
So you mentioned psychiatry and Scientology, right?
Yeah.
So growing up in Scientology, we won't beat this to death, but just quickly. Growing up in Scientology, what were you educated to believe about psychiatry and its influence on the world?
That it was the sole evil influence in the universe. Like, that they are the evil thetans that are bent on control, manipulation, and degradation of humanity.
And why? Like, what reasons were...
Because they're scared, because they can't survive while others are happy, because they're truly suppressive, dark souls and evil beings.
But, like, how is psychiatry used to suppress everybody in the world in the eyes of a Scientologist?
By drugging and numbing and,
right.
you know, keeping the person unconscious.
Right.
And it's just, so much in Scientology just isn't true. Gay people aren't covertly hostile. L. Ron Hubbard says that you're better off sleeping with an adder a very poisonous snake than being friends with a homosexual.
Right.
There's so many holes in that religion. There's so many missing pieces. L. Ron Hubbard died of a stroke in his early 70s, and his wife was in federal prison, and he was an unindicted co-conspirator to a crime. His own son committed suicide. Another one sued him for possession of the church he has. David Miscavige's own sister, Denise Miscavige, in Clearwater, was arrested for scoring pot off of tenants of her houses instead of rent. Her daughter was arrested numerous times for pilfering houses and pawning things for drugs. His own brother, Ron Miscavige, is out of the blue Scientology. His father hates Scientology, and David Miscavige spent $10,000 a week for the last year and a half stalking his own father for no reason other than he didn't want him to speak.
Didn't his own mother actually commit suicide?
Did he?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to say he's the cause of that, but I think your point is that Scientology is supposed to have all of the answers to life.
Yeah.
L. Ron Hubbard, who founded it, David Miscavige, who runs it, have about as dysfunctional of a life as anyone else.
They're beyond dysfunctional. L. Ron Hubbard was married 3 times. His ex-wives, if you ever want to know what they have to say about him, it's all pretty terrible stuff.
Right.
David Miscavige's own wife, Shelley, hasn't been seen in over 7 years. These aren't successful, happy men. They're very dark and nasty people.
Right.
And
so I actually interrupted you. I apologize.
That's
I apologize. Fine. You were saying where you stood on Scientology in general.
Yeah.
And so I asked you to clarify what you meant by the purpose of Scientology is a lie. And
yeah. Where I stand on Scientology in general, I stand on the side of truth. I stand on the side of facts and evidence and proof. I stand on the side of personal belief and knowingness. I stand against a dictatorship. I stand against being controlled. I stand against thought control. I stand against anyone who would dictate who you would know or who you would speak to or what you would read.
Right.
This is life. It's your only one you have.
So do you consider yourself to be an anti-Scientologist?
I don't know what that means. I
don't either.
I really don't. I mean, my opinion is I was born into something.
Do you consider yourself to be a church attacker? There's these ideas that people have when they're in the church, right?
Yeah.
That anyone who has drifted away, there's almost like categories of bad guys,
yeah.
right?
Here's what
church attacker, I remember when I was in, I would equate anyone who would dare speak negatively about Scientology. Those people are on the same level as the guys picketing outside on the sidewalk. And I get church attackers about the worst thing you could be.
Here's what I am. I'm against bullies. In that regard, I'm bigger than the church. I'm better than the church. And it's proven. The church is dying.
Do you object to people doing Scientology?
No.
Okay.
No, I say do it, enjoy it, but don't ever, ever, ever try to control my friends or my family and who they're going to talk to or what they want to know. Because I'm a pretty good debater, And the fact is, debating a Scientologist, one, they can't debate. They don't know how to confront and shatter suppression. They know how to run away from it and hide.
Right.
That's what they do. They'll never confront me. I literally could walk through Clearwater talking OT materials and they would just run away. No one could ever handle me.
Right.
I mean, what they would do is, what are your crimes, Nick? What are your crimes, Nick? I heard you're a drug addict and alcoholic, Nick. Yeah, well,
right.
You could also say I'm a black midget, and that's not going to hold much weight either.
Do you think that your mom, so there was a period there where the church was really pressuring your mom to disconnect from you, and then she talks about this in Going Clear. Mm-hmm. And she they sort of got to her for, I think it was a few days.
A few hours.
Was it a few hours?
Oh, yeah, a few days. I think they got to her for a few days.
And then she was basically like, and then Going Clear discusses what happened, and I won't cover the same ground. Mm-hmm. But the question here is, do you think the church would have even had the leverage on her to get her to make that decision, even for a few days, if she knew that there were not any other unreleased OT levels waiting to be done?
No,
right?
No, never. She thought it all existed.
Right. Because she had already done OT7, she had already done OT8. Mm-hmm. And there's thousands of people in Scientology currently who are in that condition where they're done with OT7, they're done with OT8, and the church actually has more leverage on those guys than they do on people who haven't started the OT
how about this? How about this? I am right. Anyone who thinks that OT9 and above exists, you're wrong. Time will prove it. Remember my name. It's Nick Lister. You're wrong. And you'll remember that I, per the church, a drug addict, alcoholic, guy who tried to take over the church apparently, worse than Judas is what I heard. I think I'm in the big leagues these days. I'm smarter than you.
Right. It's funny because for me, and I know this is your interview, but it's kind of like a discussion, right?
Yeah.
The stuff I've learned since I've allowed myself to, I guess, read the interwebs, the stuff I've learned that has given me a new perspective on L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology and the OT levels and whatnot, it hasn't necessarily changed my opinion on what my prior experience had been. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't change any of the friends I made. It doesn't change any of the good experiences I had. It kind of puts it in a different context,
right?
You know. But I think you and I were lucky in the sense that those years of our lives that we spent were the younger years of our lives, and we still have the most productive years ahead of us.
Yeah, no,
right?
When people look at, talk to me about it, and the worst thing I like to hear is, I'm so sorry, and I hate hearing that because I'm so fortunate. I'm so lucky to be me, and it's not because I made it out of the Scientology or all that, whatever that is. It's because I'm always willing to look. I'm always willing to be wrong, and I'm curious and I'm interested. I'm willing to look, and that's something that Scientologists aren't willing to do. There's a beautiful world out there, and self-realization is such an important aspect to life. Finding who you are,
right.
And no religion can give you that.
Right.
No book can give you that. You can give yourself that through your own study and search for knowledge. You know.
Right.
And that's why I'm lucky, is because I found the true pursuit. The pursuit of, I don't have all the answers, but I'm getting them, and that's the painful part about Scientology. You say you got the answers, but they're not there, and they're cut short,
right,
and they stop.
I read this quote somewhere. I don't know who these quotes get attributed to, but it was something like, if you come across a man who's searching for God, follow him. If you come across a man who thinks he's found God, run away.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons I wanted to talk to a lot of people who, particularly the younger people who grew up in it, who, let's say, had their own wins, had a point in their life where they embraced Scientology, true believers, and then came full circle to eventually leaving, is because I'm very interested to see what makes, in different people, in different situations, what makes that decision occur. And for me, it was never a single turning point of like, oh my God, everything's a lie, or oh my God, everything's bad. It was more like, once I saw high-profile people leaving, who I used to really know and respect, people like Mike and Marty and Jason Begay, that at least got me to start to look.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't get me to start to think everything was shit. It just got me to start to look.
Yeah.
And once I started to look, I started to find other people who I really, really respected who had left. And honestly, one of the biggest things for me was this thing about that there are no OT levels above OT8. I mean, it might sound stupid to someone from the outside.
Sure.
Like
there's no more ding dongs after the woo-woo ceremony.
Right. When personally I never even did a lot of auditing
like
on the bridge. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the fact that I know that every Scientologist in the world is chasing this carrot of full OT. Full OT is this hypothetical state where you're literally in a godlike state. You're not reliant on your body. You're full control over matter, energy. I mean, literally, just think of a god and the old gods, and it's a god, okay? And everyone in Scientology who has already done OT7 and OT8, they're just as fucked up, if not more so, than anyone else you might come across in life. And Scientologists discount this because none of those people have done all of the OT levels. And for me, the person who, this is a guy named Dan Kuhn, and anyone who grew up in my generation of Scientology on staff or in the Sea Org know who Dan Kuhn is. He's an important dude, and I won't bother explaining it, but he's an important dude who worked with LRH and spent a lot of time compiling all of the materials that LRH did leave behind after his death. And Dan Kuhn has left the Sea Org and left Scientology, and Dan Kuhn says there are no fucking OT levels above OT8.
Yeah, one last point is 98% of the staff of Old St. Hill are declared SPs.
Exactly. And there's all sorts of, and it's almost like once I started looking and once I started going, fuck, man, to say there's no OT 9 or 10 would be like convincing a Catholic that there is no heaven. I mean, it's a deal breaker. You can't go on past that point. You can't. It's not possible. Because the entire subject of Scientology is predicated upon this bridge that goes all the way to full OT. And if that bridge doesn't exist, then Scientology is a lie. And it doesn't matter if Scientology helped save your marriage, or helped your son get off drugs, or any of those things. Those are good things, but that doesn't make Scientology not a lie if there is no upper bridge. And that's why, even though I pretty much have come to the conclusion that Scientology is a scam, it doesn't mean I don't feel like I've been helped by Scientology. It doesn't mean, I look back on my involvement with Scientology and on staff as actually a very positive portion of my life, ironically. It's just I feel compelled to have the conversation with other people like me on how they got involved, similar to me, and how they turned around and got uninvolved, and what did it for them, because I know it did it for me.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more details to my story and shit that at some point I'll probably tell, but I'll tell you, when I first read that online that somebody was speculating that there were no OT levels above 8, I mean, you might as well have said to me the fucking sky's not blue. I mean, it was the gap between my reality and that statement was so far. It would be like that. Yeah, the sky's not blue. How long? What's it going to take for me to convince you of that?
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
No, I know.
And for your average, common, young Scientologist, I would sort of just throw out there, look at how many people worked with LRH, had been audited by LRH or whatever, had done the OT levels, who have just walked away from Scientology, who have since walked away from Scientology. If OT 7 and 8 were already supposed to put you into this semi-OT status where you were at least approaching cause over the physical universe, nothing would get someone to walk away from that. Do you know what I mean? No amount of physical labor or requests for donations or hours spent locked in a fucking basement would get someone to leave a subject that genuinely was going to put you into some godlike status. Even talking about it sounds ridiculous now. I mean,
feel ridiculous.
The longer I have spent out of Scientology, the more, I won't say embarrassed, but it's bordering on embarrassment. I haven't hit full embarrassment yet, but it borders on it.
No, I've hit full embarrassment. I've hit full embarrassment.
Do you know what I mean?
No, the truth is, I'm doing this. This is like the last interview on it. I'm answering the questions I've answered my whole life on it,
right?
So that I can give people that want the answers. Maybe it'll help them.
Right.
Maybe it won't. I don't know. But I know I get asked these questions all the time, nonstop, and in earnest as well. I have a lot of people who've come to me over the years, in tears, troubled, angry, depressed. What's up, Nick?
Right.
What the hell happened to us?
Right.
Well, there's a lot of answers.
Yeah.
But what happened was, at the end of the day, I moved on, and a lot of people want to do that.
Yeah.
And so, I hope everyone can, and that's where I'm at on the subject.
Great. Awesome. The last thing I just want to say is that if Scientology were allowed to just market itself as, we can help you feel a bit better or whatnot.
Sure.
We can give you some more confidence, then, maybe it wouldn't be so dangerous. But it's actually against church policy to market Scientology that way. It's actually a suppressive act to say Scientology is something that can just make you feel a bit better. You have to market it as something that's going to save every man, woman, child in this entire universe.
Of course.
Right? That policy is called soft sell. But the thing is, if Scientology, that people aren't in Scientology just because they want to be helped a little bit. They're in Scientology because they're holding out for that big reveal, that big carrot, because they're willing to throw their family members and their friends away just because the church comes in and says, you have to disconnect from this person or else you're going to be declared. And the leverage there is, we're going to take away your bridge.
Yeah,
right?
It's disgusting. I mean, how do you keep someone believing something because of the fear of losing their family? Like
Right.
isn't that how pimps keep hoes? Right? You leave. Isn't that how the mafia controls its henchmen?
Well, I think the proof, honestly, is in the results here. Like, the reason Scientology is in a declining state is because somewhere along the line, and it probably started with LRH, I'm pretty sure it did, somewhere along the line it was decided that it was okay to control people through fear. And you can't have a religious movement that is supposed to be about freedom and free thought and progressivism, actually, and try to control them through fear. They're opposites, right? And so your point is, how do you control someone through fear? You can only do it for so long before it crumbles.
The thing I learned about Scientology is they're 100% bark, no bite. It's all ghosts and apparition.
Right.
You know, what I realize is it's not real. None of it's real. Sure, some of the technology is real, but it's as if I took a book on physics and called it Nicholas Physics. You know, yeah, it's real, but Nicholas Physics isn't.
Right.
The stuff in it is, but I didn't come up with it. It's not me. He didn't come up with the shit. He streamlined some stuff. Just, it is what it is.
Right. Great. All right. Well, we've covered an